Hello and welcome to the Select Board meeting, December 18, 2024. Before we start, we've had several meetings that have gone very late, and I haven't had the opportunity to thank some very important people. So before we start, in case we get too late, I want to thank Nate Beisheim, Nathan Kent, and Joe Dulett for providing us the services to get us on TV and for public media. So thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Next, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
The meeting being recorded.
And this meeting is being recorded. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So we have a full agenda tonight. We're going to begin with public comments. We're going to have public comments for every item except for the open meeting section that has to do with the addition to the G-bar. So if you have a comment about the remodeling of the G-bar, if you want to hold that until we get to that, we will take care of that. But anybody that wants to have a comment about anything you would like, please remember the Select Board will not be responding to your public comment, and you're welcome to get up there and spend 3 minutes public commenting. Is there anybody for public comment?
Thank you. Hi, Marsha Dalton at 37 Pine Street. I just want to comment just a little bit about the veterans housing. As I stated before, we are not against the veterans housing, but I would just like the board to keep in mind the neighbors, not just the veterans. The veterans are very important, and I'm not saying that, but the neighbors are also impacted by this. And if there's a 5-story building, it's going to cause a lot of heartache in the neighborhood. So that's really all I had to say, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Marsha Dalton.
Hi, my name is Mary Cuniff, and I live at 14 Erie Street. My sister Christine Johnson has lived at 12 Erie Street since 1996 and has been the homeowner since our sister Betty passed away a few months ago. Christine is unable to attend tonight and asked me to read this statement in her stead. This group here has been discussing proposed projects on the Pine Street site for a couple of years now. Started with the brothers who proposed a 4-story condo building and were disappointed when they were told they could only go up to 3 stories. And one of them needed to be parking, as on-street parking in the neighborhood is already difficult. Now we are listening to plans for a 5-story building for veterans. While I am wholeheartedly in favor of veterans housing, I am concerned about the size of the proposed project. A building that large will block any sun from reaching our property. In addition, a facility that will accommodate as many residents as proposed, as well as any visitors or caretakers they may have, will require more access to parking than this neighborhood that already includes many multifamily homes can accommodate. My only additional comment is a really quick question. Again, it was raised at the last meeting. How can we be informed about these meeting schedules? Recently, we have only learned of all these meetings from our neighbors. We're not getting any mailings or attention. And I wanted to add that I fully appreciate and understand the need for the dire need for the veterans housing. However, the current proposal does not suit the site or the neighborhood. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else for public comment? Sir? Just give us your name and address, please.
Yes. Steve Gadman, 11 Pine Street. I have a few bullet points that I'm just going to rattle off. Some of the stuff may have been discussed already, and then I just have a statement to read. So I was wondering if there's any plans on working on the sewer pipes on that street. We've had many problems. Has the master plan for 2035 for our area be considered in any of this? Where is everybody going to park if the VFW post is in the building, along with caretakers and stuff like that? Lighting on the building and parking, is that going to be, is the area going to be affected? That has to be taken into consideration. The mass noise laws, being that building being that close to all the residential houses, the state law is 50 dB, and with all the equipment going on the roof, the houses are too close to put everything on one lot. That has to be spread out throughout 2 lots so that the neighbors aren't affected by it. And then the right to light, we do have the right to light. There is a law out there to protect that from us, that you can't take our light away from us. And I understand it's for the veteran housing, and I'm not opposed to the housing, but to go up 5 stories to take everybody's light, it has to be spread out throughout the 2 lots. And the town bylaw. The town bylaw, it can't go that high. And I've been in meetings before, and they said that the bylaw to have a building that high, there's no special permit that you can get to put in something like that. So that has to be taken into consideration too. Now, the statement I have is, we have heard from the town what their wants and needs are for the project. We have heard from the VFW their wants, needs, and demands. Who asked the residents? We have heard of closed meetings with the select board, meetings held with the VFW and members of the select board. Where is our meeting? We have heard from the board that they do not want the burden on Burrell Street residents moving the VFW post there. What about Pine Street residents, who will now have the burden of the local, a VFW post, and a 42-unit veteran housing on the street? How is this fair? It's very upsetting that the people this project will affect most, impact on, have not been considered. The neighbors will have the noise, the parking, the traffic issues. Has anyone done any research on any veteran housing? Do they have a canteen serving alcohol in them? It seems concerning to me, knowing many veterans choose not to be around alcohol, that this housing unit will not be something they would consider. Mr. Grishman, when you posted on social media, this is a win-win. I guess you were not thinking about the burden it would cause the taxpayer residents and the voters that live on Pine Street. Where is our win? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gadman. Is there? Okay. Okay, sir, do you want to go to public, do you want to speak? Okay. Okay. All right, is there anybody else that would like to go to public comment? Oh, okay. Mr. Demento?
You should be able to speak. You have to unmute yourself. No, he's unmuted. He's not loud enough.
I am unmuted.
There you go. Thanks, Bill.
Sounds like.
I'm now unmuted by you. Thank you. I want to thank all the members of the board, of the select board, for all the work they've done for the last 2 years in spending at least $1.7 million of town's funds. Being one of the 290,000 veterans in Massachusetts, this has been a crying need for a long, long time. Many of our Vietnam veterans, which I am not, I'm a pre-Vietnam person in the Army, but they are coming of the age where they need this facility and they need them. I am very proud of Swampscott for being a leader and doing all they have done to achieve this goal. And I hope tonight a decision is made to move forward to provide veterans housing on Pine Street. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Demento. Is there anyone else for public comment? Not seeing anyone for public comment. I
have a couple of emails.
Okay.
Into the record.
Mr. Grishman.
Great. Katie Arrington, 40 Roy Street. While 89 Borough Street is not a viable permanent location, the veterans are trying to work with the town by agreeing to move during the construction of the affordable housing project on Pine Street. They are asking for simple requests. One, that the town cover the costs of moving and build out of the basement at 89 Borough Street as previously promised. Two, that the town will cover gas, electricity, water, sewer, snow, landscaping, and rodent control for at least the first year of temporary relocation. Three, the VFW liquor and entertainment licenses remain and are assigned to the temporary location. Four, that the town ensures, in addition to the proposed 1,500 square foot build out in the new development allotted to the VFW, portions of one or two of the units on the first floor be repurposed for additional VFW use. And five, that the town grants the VFW maximum lease allowable by law. The RFP should be edited tonight to include these minimal asks. This isn't a perfect project, but giving even slightly shows appreciation and good faith. Let's all work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arrington via Mr.
Yep.
Grishman.
And then I did want to read Eric Schneider's.
Can you use the mic there? They can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Perfect. I did want to read Eric Schneider. He sent an email to us this afternoon. Dear Select Board members, Eric Schneider, 480 Puritan Road, Swampscott. Dear Select Board members, I am unable to attend tonight's meeting, so I'm sending an email. I am writing to express my concerns that the Select Board will exceed the authority granted to it by town meeting if the board votes to convey the site to a developer that will construct a building without a new VFW post. As you know, the powers of the Select Board are limited, and its power to enter into
is a member of those other groups, but they may be veterans. We have 488, I think, veterans in the town, and everybody, it should be an inclusive body, not just for those groups. So he is right. Only veterans, particularly combat veterans, know what combat is about. We shouldn't presume that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. DiCillo. Okay, so does anybody else have public comment? So with that said, we're going to now move to the town administrator's report. Mr. Acting Town Administrator.
Thank you very much. May I respectfully ask to be moved to after the new and old business, just to give some of the people an opportunity to speak?
You may, and we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we are going to move to acknowledge our new DPW hire, Mr. Mark Noonan. Mr. Cresta, would you like
before Mark
to,
speaks.
Before you speak, Mark, can we talk about you?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce
Mr. Cresta?
Mark Noonan. As many of you know, I've had a vacant position in the DPW office for close to a year now. Mark has stepped up. He's been with me for a week and a half now, and all indications are that he is going to be an asset to the department. Mark comes with years of experience in the private sector and has his professional engineer's license. And looking forward to it. Mark?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I have 16 years of engineering consulting experience, and I'm a licensed civil engineer in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And I'm looking forward to applying my skills to the maintenance and improvement of the town's infrastructure. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
Welcome.
Welcome to Swampscott.
Thanks.
I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
Have you been here for a couple days, or are you coming here? What?
Last week was my first week.
Okay. And did you enjoy it?
I did. The employees in the town have been super helpful with my onboarding, and Gino's been showing me the ropes, and I've gotten to know some of the guys on the crews, the skills that they have, and how the maintenance of the town occurs every day. So still a lot to learn, but first week or two I've just been getting organized, familiarizing myself with the vault that houses all the town's records for water and sewer and as-built projects, and Gino even gave me a tour of the wastewater lift station and a few other things around town. So,
Well, you come highly recommended. You were the talk of the town before you got here. So really, I can say for me as a resident, I'm really happy that you're here.
I appreciate it, and I live in Marblehead with my wife Kate.
All right, we won't hold that against you. We'll be checking for a new realtor for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. That's great news. So next, we're going to our municipal decarbonization plan with wherever you would like.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Martha Schmidt. I'm the chair of the Renewable Energy Committee, and I was working on the decarbonization plan with our facilities director, Max. Anyhow, the municipal decarbonization plan is being done to fulfill a requirement to be designated as a climate leader, which is a new Department of Energy Resources program called Green Communities 2.0. We have been a member of Green Communities since 2010, and under that program, we received a number of grants over the last number of years for energy efficiency projects. The new program is directed at reducing emissions in municipal operations, and that's in alignment with the Commonwealth's goal of net zero emissions by 2050. And the plan only targets municipal operations. It's not like town-wide, or it isn't directed at commercial or residential buildings. Also, it's non-binding, so it's just a plan. So in order to become designated as a climate leader, there were 5 criteria that we needed to meet. So those included having a climate or energy committee to advise and coordinate with the town on green energy and climate activities. Another criteria was to have a municipal decarbonization commitment, which we achieved by approving a climate action plan at town meeting in May of 2023. Another criteria was that the town needed a zero emissions vehicle policy, and we did that with energy code, which we adopted at last March's 2024 town meeting. So the final criteria was to have a municipal decarbonization plan submitted to DOER, and that is what we're looking for approval for. So what is the plan? It basically documents our emissions for each facility sections to 2027, 2030, 2040, and 2050. And there are goals set for each of those years. For example, we would need to reduce emissions by 15% by 2027, 35% by 2030, 65% by 2040, and 95% by 2050. So how did we get there? So we basically looked at our capital plan, first of all, to understand when renovations were going to be planned at each of the facilities, and then kind of working together with the facilities director, refining that plan, so just to make sure it made sense, right? So do the timeframes make sense? When are renovations planned? You know, when are we expecting to update the HVAC systems? And so we came up with a plan, and the good news is that we got a big jump start because we already removed the older elementary schools from our inventory. So those basically got us to zero emissions for those buildings. And we replaced, you know, the elementary school with a brand new school, which is great. It's emissions free. So that's the overview. I'm not sure how much more detail you want to hear about. A few examples are, like, we assume that the fire station will have renovations done by 2030, so that'll zero out emissions for the fire station. For the middle school, we have something in the capital plan already, but we didn't want to be too aggressive by saying, well, we're going to reduce emissions for the middle school by 2030. We said we could probably take 15% credit by 2030 and then the rest by 2040. We assumed that we would do the DPW by 2040, and the high school, you know, that's longer term, and that's not really in the capital plan. So we had to make some assumptions as we went along. So are there any questions on the detail? There's a lot of detail in the report, many tables, and but again, a lot of it is assumptions on what we could do when.
Just make a quick comment. So first of all, everyone that feels supportive of this should feel extremely grateful to Martha Schmidt, because Martha did incredible amount of work to put this plan together, and she was not alone. Max, Casper, as well as Gino, and please, if there are others that kind of had a big hand in pulling this together, I want to make sure that the acknowledgement is made, because there was a lot of very detailed work to get to very specific buildings by very specific timeframes, specific vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just a plan, but it is very detailed now. It's only a small part of our emissions, unfortunately, or fortunately, in town overall, but we have now an incredibly detailed plan going forward for capital planning, et cetera.
And Ryan Hale also participated.
Thank you.
I did have a couple questions for you, Martha. I think maybe Marzi, you can help with this. I'm just wondering, as far as grants are involved, like what does it look like opportunity-wise for us if we were to turn around and say sell a number of our vehicles that we use and just go right to electric vehicles? You know, we have vehicles that are relatively new, they're young, and yet they're still gas, and I'm just wondering if there's been consideration into selling them and possibly getting grants or subsidize getting electric, and other options like heating pumps in some of the different buildings.
Well, I think that's something that we should work collectively with all of the department heads, especially the ones that are utilizing the vehicles, to assure that an electric vehicle could meet the demands and the needs of each of the departments. We're always on the lookout for any funding that we can bring into the town and really offset or really maximize and you know, use any of the funds as a match towards the grants. You know, we have a great relationship with our committees. We work really closely with Martha, Max, and obviously the chiefs, as well as Gino and any other department that, you know, would utilize electric vehicles. So we'll continue to be on the lookout for that.
Okay.
For funding, grant funding.
Martha, I did read this fairly quickly, and it is really detailed, and I think it's a great plan. I just also want to hear, I'd like to hear what the Finance Committee has to say about what it would take to make sure we expedite and get ahead of the curve on all this. So, Doug, were you looking for a vote here tonight?
Yes, we do need to take a vote to support this, and do we actually have the language in here?
Well, do we need to take a vote tonight, or is there a timing on it?
We'd like to submit it by the end of the year in order to qualify for, you know, this program.
What is it we're qualifying for?
To become a climate leader, which basically makes us eligible for larger grants. It's not, I don't think there's like a Cinderella moment at December 31st. Is that true, Martha, or is?
Actually, the information that we've got from DOER is that in order to be classified as a climate leader in this cycle, this plan would need to be approved by the end of this year, and the grants that are opened up by becoming a climate leader are significant. For just to put it in perspective, each year we're eligible for up to $100,000 in green communities grants already. This will be orders of magnitude bigger than that. So,
So we just need to approve the plan and then send a letter that's stating that the executive body of the town has approved the plan, correct?
Right, we need 2 letters of support. One is from the superintendent, which we received already, and then the other is from the town administrator, saying that the select board met and approved.
So I make a motion for the select board to wholeheartedly support this municipal decarbonization plan.
I will second that.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, so thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you, Mel.
Now we'll move to the, what do we have here? We'll move to our liquor licenses. And we have, Gino, who do we have here for our liquor licenses?
We have Angelica Noble.
You mean Officer Noble?
Either one's okay.
I'm sorry.
I watched the meeting from a couple weeks ago just to see where you left off. Are there any questions first? Or do you want me just to go through each business and kind of give an update of where we were and where we are now?
Why don't you give the update of where we are now?
Okay, so, sure. So I won't go through every single business, but there were two businesses, Pomona and the Italian Club, that both had outstanding inspections with the fire department. Those both are all set. The fire department did sign off on them, so the only thing that is currently outstanding is a balance owed to the town by Hawthorne. Other than that, everything else is totally up to date on our end.
And where are we in this presentation? Can we, for tracking, are we just in license?
Hold on, Diane, you're gonna bring that back up?
Bless you.
I'm just looking at the list of,
I believe if you, this is the first rubric, the second rubric is the one that has, well, they're all checked off now.
they're all checked off, yes.
Yeah, as Angelica just said.
Okay, so as far as what things pertain to the liquor license,
Mhm.
Except for Hawthorne.
no, Hawthorne is on here.
So they're all checked off except for Hawthorne, is what I was saying.
Diane, if you just make it larger, like open up.
So,
I've
and,
updated an outstanding one today, but I should let you know.
All right, so Hawthorne is back in.
yeah,
Hawthorne is paid up.
Yeah, they paid him a water bill today. They paid a week.
what's that? No, there aren't, but it's this,
Okay, right here.
yeah. So I would move approval of, did we do any of these last time?
We did some of them last time. There's a couple that hadn't finished paying that we had out. And we also pulled out Dockside because we had
Can we just-
questions
Can we
up
just like
there.
redo all of it, basically, just wholeheartedly? As opposed to like figuring out what was there and what's not from last time?
We can,
Reiterating what we did last time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plus,
That way we're covering, we're making
right,
sure.
okay.
we can do that
So I'd like a motion, I make a
on the
motion,
liquor license.
on the liquor license, I make
Mm-hmm.
a motion to approve all of them on this list, with the exception of Bertucci's, which is closed, and Little G Provisions, which didn't submit because of the other conversation we're gonna have.
Correct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we go to the common vicar license.
Hello. So were any approved last time, or all the ones that did not have outstanding items to submit were approved last time? And so now
Yes,
we're just
we
looking at the
approved
ones?
all of the common vic licenses that had no outstanding issues.
Okay. So currently, the only one that remains outstanding is Oyo frozen yogurt. I have tried multiple times to get in touch with the business owner, Mr. Salim, and have not had any luck. I did have luck with Starbucks and with Renzo's Pizza, so they are all set. They have submitted their materials, but Oyo remains outstanding.
Are they still in business?
Yes.
They're still in business. They have the right to be in business through the end of the year under the current common victualler license, and then
No
from
yogurt?
January 1st, I guess we have to go full Hulk mode on them and take out all their tables and chairs. So, because really that's what a common victualler license is in its essence, is just the ability to have seating at your establishment. It's the food permit that allows you to serve your food.
So this is a food permit, and is it is possible to approve this pending they have we're waiting on a payment?
We're waiting on payment and
Okay.
a full application for renewal.
Okay, so pending payment and full application of the renewal, if they can get that into you by the 31st, let's have a motion to accept that as well. Would anybody have a problem with that?
No.
So approve them all and with.
Subject to.
Subject to?
Yeah.
Yep, so,
So moved.
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now we move to the entertainment license.
I don't have any outstanding issues on my end. Everybody that is subject to an entertainment license per MGL Chapter 40 has submitted the necessary paperwork and payment. So unless there are any questions from you, I'm happy to answer anything, but I have no outstanding issues on my end.
Okay. So I am going to bring up one issue on the dock side, because we have had complaints on the dock side. And I know for myself personally, I had a chance to speak to the proprietors of the dockside, and they have expressed that they are working very hard to make sure that there are minimal complaints and that they will continue to do so. I also looked into some of the complaints that could have possibly gone to the police department, and actually those complaints were minimal too. What I did learn was if you look up complaints surrounding the dockside, if there is a traffic violation or somebody is pulled over, the dockside address is used as a location. So the police department went through every single call that came about the dockside and identified every single one of them. And they were minimal, okay? The dockside, the police department, the chief of police has promised today that if there are any calls involving the dockside, that he would personally make sure he called the owners of the dockside to make sure that there was no issues, or if there is an issue, we would resolve it right away, okay? So that's where we are. So if we can have a motion to approve all the entertainment license.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And thank you for the detailed investigation, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Okay, so now moving to the Class 2 license renewal procedures for the vehicles.
Did we not do that?
Did we do that one?
We did that.
We did that.
All right, so where are these, so are we all set with everything then?
Little G now.
Little g, so now we'll continue. We actually carried over our public hearing. We're still in a public hearing for little g. So Marissa, are you going to do little g?
Yes, yeah, happy to introduce, summarize what's going on, and then Greg Brackman, owner of G and Little G, is also here too, if you have any questions for him as well. But I believe there was some confusion at the last meeting over what the status of Little G is. For anybody that hasn't been in there, it is, you have Big G and you have Little G. If you are standing from the outside, the two businesses are not connected. Public cannot pass from Big G to Little G. Little G, however, is a provisions market as well as a casual eatery. You can pass between both of those. Greg right now is looking to just close down the market section of Little G. It hasn't been profitable, so he's looking to get rid of it close down the market, and with that get rid of his package store liquor license that's associated with it, and just expand the dining that currently exists at Little G Eatery. So add about 20 to 25 new seats, and there you have it. And then alter the premises for his current liquor license as well to allow for serving and consumption where the additional seating will be located. And that's pretty much the gist of it. But Greg is here if you guys have any additional questions for him as well. So.
Greg, do you want to say anything?
No, I mean, obviously we're thankful to be in the town for almost 17 years now. So there's really no physical change to the building at all. Basically, that Little G market where we sold, we had a package store license and we had some packaged foods and provisions. Like she said, has not been profitable, so we just decided to take that small 400 to 500 square feet and put 20 seats in it. That's all we're doing. And we've obviously forfeited our package store license. So that small 400 to 500 square feet, 20 seats, and we just want to be able to serve alcohol in that area, which is connected to the whole restaurant. There's really not much of a change at all.
Now, does Little G and Big G have two separate liquor licenses, or is it one big liquor license?
They have one, because the business is all associated under one tax ID, and all deliveries are received through the same rear egress or entrance to the business, so everything is combined under one liquor license.
Okay,
And the building department does one annual inspection for both establishments.
okay, great. So, does anybody have any questions? We appreciate your restaurant, too.
Thank you so much.
Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. The one thing I do want to say, Gino, we brought up in the fall the issues that the neighbors have on the other side of the restaurants and all through the area, and it has to do with rodent management. And so could you please work with the Board of Health and come back to us and let us know what management is really happening and what the tasks are with the town, and so that we really see a clear plan, and we can get back to the neighbors on that.
I will do that.
Thank you.
I think we need a motion to close the public hearing.
Yes, can I have a motion to close the public hearing? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We didn't second it, but
I thought Doug did.
no.
Doug-
Sure.
okay.
Hearing thing.
Doug's the second. All right. All right,
You're speed facilitating,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
it's closed. Okay, so next, we have, public hearing is closed. Now we go to update on our town financial forecast.
I'm sorry, we also need a motion to put your electronic signatures on all of the licenses.
Can we have a motion to put our signatures on electronic?
Second.
Do we have, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All set over there?
I think so. I just want to clarify one thing. The change of, so on the consent agenda, there's 3 change of managers, just so that you know, I confirmed those do not affect the annuals. So I don't think I'm going to stay for the change of managers. But there shouldn't be any questions. Everything's there, and they don't affect the annual renewals. They're totally separate.
Thank you, Officer Noble.
You're welcome.
So your pen's out.
That's it.
All right. So last year Angelica was reporting on liquor licenses. This year Angelica is Officer Noble enforcing the liquor licenses. Okay. It's called moving up the chain. Okay. So next on our agenda is our updated town financial report, and we have our town financial director, Amy Sorrell.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So this, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So this is the FY '26 preliminary revenue forecast. Myself, the treasurer, and the acting town administrator, Gina Cresta, have gone through this. So this was supposed to have been shared in November, but unfortunately, the town administrator and myself were both out at the same time. So this is just an overview of FY '26. I do want to emphasize that it's preliminary. Things can still change. So I want to start off by just reviewing the adopted financial policy of the town, which is that our property taxes will be budgeted based off 2% of the tax levy plus $425,000 of new growth. The average of our last 5 years of new growth is still above $425,000, so it's the lesser of the two. We do obviously check that every year to make sure that we're using the right number. In the event that the town administrator determines that that policy is insufficient to meet the budgetary needs of the town, they can come before the select board and request to, go above our policy but stay within the constraints of the law. Our estimated local receipts are not to exceed 90% of the prior year actual collections. So you'd be looking at the FY '24 actual receipt, and then there are adjustments made for known items. We'll get into that more. We review grant revenues annually to determine if they're sustainable. We currently don't have any grants impacting our general fund. And then the town will build and maintain its reserves in compliance with these policies. Just because a lot of you were not here when we adopted these policies. Does anyone have questions before I move on? Okay, just wanted to make sure. So I want to start this with, I understand that the tax levy calculation is confusing for everyone. So there are two slides that you're going to see. The first one is the Prop 2.5, so the Massachusetts maximum that we are allowed to levy on the residents and the businesses in town. We have to calculate this every year, even though it's not part of our policy, because it's a DOR requirement, and we have to calculate the maximum allowable levy to ensure we're never going over that. This slide is showing that calculation. I'm not, unless you want me to, I'm not going to go over it in detail, because then it potentially gets a little more confusing.
Yep.
But if Mary Ellen would like, I will gladly go through.
No, I'm good with that, but I would like you to make a YouTube video so that we could put that up on our,
I cannot even express to you how many times I have drawn this out on the whiteboard in my office, even just explaining it to my colleagues out of their curiosity.
I think we should have a video, an educational video on that.
Maybe a TikTok.
That's
You'll
going
get
to
lots of
be
views 'cause
banned
Mary
in
Ellen
less than a
watches
month.
every day.
On TikTok? Okay.
TikTok's being banned in the US, I think January 19th, so that TikTok video wouldn't live on too long.
Okay, let's see this.
So the next slide is the slide showing our policy and our calculation. So if you would like to follow along, the green column is the current year that we're in, FY25. The tax rates were certified by the Department of Revenue. Those are locked in. The blue is the future for next year. So if you look in green on tax levy limit per policy, the underlined 58 million, that was the limit per policy last year. The actual levy, the second to last line, the 58,385,000, you see that carried up to the top in the blue. We have 2%, which is the increase allowed, so that 1.16, plus the 425 of new growth. So the tax levy limit per our policy is that 59,978. This is just one piece of the revenue, but obviously the largest piece that we have. Okay. The next part of our revenue is the state aid, so, or cherry sheet, as we call it. Per policy, we, at this stage, assume it's flat to the current year. So FY25, it's exactly mirrored to that. As we go through the process and get the governor's budget, House Ways and Means, we can make adjustments to this. We usually try not to assume too much of an increase without any support for it. And obviously, if we get any notification from, the governor or the Commonwealth that they're going to be reducing aid, then we would have to adjust at that point. These are our estimated local receipts. So I color-coded this just to make it easier so we don't have to go through each line. So for future 26, every line that is still in that light blue is 90% of the actual collected in FY24. The lines that are in green, we have substantial information to be able to say that we are going to reasonably collect more than that 90%, and we've made those adjustments there. So based off the cannabis excise tax history, which is 3% of the gross sales of the cannabis business in town, based off the trend of that and the sales that we've been getting, we felt comfortable increasing that. The meals excise has been increasing, and we felt comfortable with that 400,000 estimate at this stage. And our motor vehicle excise tax has been pretty consistently meeting that 2.4 million, and we felt more comfortable with that than the 2.3, which was the 90%. The two in yellow, the payment in lieu of taxes, is an actual agreement that we have, as is the rentals. So we put those to actual instead of the 90%. The two in, it should have been red, but that was very not readable. So this kind of pinkish shade, we had to lower these below the 90% based off information. So, to no surprise of anyone, we have spent down the bond proceeds of the new school. So we do not have that sitting in a bank collecting interest. interest rates have also come down. We could not keep the estimate of 90% of what we collected in FY '24. 425 was back to a reasonable estimate of where we feel the bank balance and the interest that we have. I do want to also highlight that pre-pandemic levels and pre-bond proceeds level, we were getting about maximum 200,000 in investment income. So this is still a good estimate. It's just we all got very comfy watching that, $2 million number sitting there. Likewise, we don't have any known building projects that are going to be pulling permits in FY '26 at this time. So that 700 number is kind of Swampscott business as normal in that department. Per DOR regulations, we cannot put anything in the miscellaneous recurring or non-recurring until it's actually collected. That was a lot. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are the fines and forfeits comprised of?
Fines and forfeits are fines that are levied by our collector's office. So if you are not paying your taxes, it's the additional fines. The forfeitures are actually, we go and levy against you, and you have to forfeit additional fines. Those also go in there. So that's all through the collector's office.
Gotcha.
And the Medicaid reimbursement, there's zero here because that really just flows through the school directly?
Yes, so when the Special Education Reserve Fund was established, it was established that those funds would be appropriated directly in there.
When they come in to the town, and then we have to appropriate?
No, they directly go.
It directly goes into that account?
Yeah, we
Goes into
designated that.
account, right? Okay.
So those do not touch the general fund at all.
Okay, good. I do have one question.
Yeah.
Payment in lieu of taxes. Do we have a mechanism on how we adjust those up or down?
So that is part of the lease agreement that is with the property. So through the lease would be how you would do that.
Thank you.
So there's also a fourth bucket that I didn't feel like needed its own slide, which is the indirect cost in the enterprise fund. So in order to keep all of the costs associated with those enterprise funds, our water, our sewer, and our public educational governmental channel, they are charged indirect costs. So it's basically costs that are carried in the general fund, such as health insurance, workers' comp insurance, the salary from the treasurer's office for processing the payroll for those employees, things like that. It is all billed directly to the general fund and then kind of charged off to the enterprise funds. We have an entire calculation that gets reviewed annually for that, for each of those funds. Those are the four main buckets that make up our general fund. With all of that said, at this stage, the preliminary total funding sources for the general fund for FY '26 is $73.5 million, which is almost $500,000 down from FY '25. So.
Right, but it's $500,000 less than what the final number was for FY '25. You're not comparing apples to apples in terms of the stage of the process, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's 90% in a lot of ways, so obviously it's going to be less. We're being conservative, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So as we, get more information and go further in this process, that number can change. This is what we start building that preliminary town administrator's budget based off of, and start taking looks at how the expenditures now match that.
So it looks like our biggest hit here that we are going to have no control over is our interest off of the money that we were,
Investment income.
our investment money, and that's nothing we can.
That is now
do there.
standing as a beautiful elementary school.
Okay.
So just next steps in our budget. The department heads have submitted their expense budget requests, and we'll begin reviewing the lines of their personnel this week. In early January, all the department heads will meet with myself and the rest of the budget team to review those requests and understand them better. And then I will be sitting down with the town administrator to develop the preliminary town administrator's budget, which gets presented to the select board by the end of January. The school committee will vote their final budget no later than February 15th. at which time the town administrator and myself will sit there and go through with any feedback from the board at the January meeting to make that budget work to get to March 1st for the town administrator's recommended budget.
Okay, and we're going to start tri-chair meetings on
Monday.
this Friday. Is it Friday or Monday?
Monday.
The 20th.
Oh, I thought it was the 23rd.
We'll double check.
Soon.
Okay.
Soon, very soon. Okay. Do you have questions?
So is that your way of saying, like, this whole idea of the budget summit? I mean, I'm not even happy about bringing this up, but how are we going to ensure that we do not have a repeat of prior years? We promised that we were going to have a way to make sure that didn't happen.
Well, as you know, we have an acting town administrator here, and we haven't had our regular town administrator in place for a little while. So that's really something that's out of our hands as a select board, and what we're going to have to do is we're just going to have to work the best we can with the school committee and try to work around these issues. And we're having these conversations now, and we're going to do the best we can. Amy spent an enormous amount of time gathering all details and information. And what is your opinion on being able to put something together?
I mean, we have an obscene amount of historical data on comparable communities as well as our own. What we were waiting on from the town administrator was the direction on how this was going to be presented and what information we should be fine-tuning to present. The previous financial summit that was done in 2020 also involved a lot of outside people that were choreographed together. Tim Dorsey gave a presentation on cost of contracts. We had an outside consultant from, I believe, the UMass Collins Center come in to review a lot of our things. So a lot of that coordination, I'm not aware of where that was standing.
So at what point would we have, it seems like maybe by the end of January, is that what you just said, like both from the school side and the town side, when would we have our kind of first blush of
so by
what
January,
the total is, what the options are, whether or not we're going to be able to stick with policy, et cetera?
So by January 31st, you'll have the general fund budget less the school to review from the town administrator standpoint. And then by February 15th, we'll have the school number. I will say last year, with the new superintendent of finance at the school committee did vote prior to that, so we did have that number before the end of January last year. But I also know that this year is a big contingency year where we have very big collective bargaining coming up, so figuring out what that unknown is going to be is an added hurdle on both sides.
I think the issue last year, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way it looked to me last year was that you as the chair worked very hard with the chair of the school committee, and you were all in agreement with what was going to work. And then we ended up at town meeting because there was a difference of opinion on the school committee. So I think the best thing we can do is just try to work through any possible issues with their entire committee and just hope that there's better communication from the school committee, with the school committee. I don't know how I should really phrase that, but I think that's what it came from.
Yeah.
You know, we were.
I mean, is it possible, or does it make sense, instead of, like, we had talked about this grand financial summit where we were all coming together and there was an orchestration, as you say. Does it make sense to have a mini version of that? If we can't sort of orchestrate all the pieces, that we just sort of bear it down a little so that we're at least opening the lines of communication between this board and the school committee so that we could at least stifle the argument of we weren't able to
Yeah, why
all
don't-
get on the same page.
So, in my opinion, because obviously you guys will, but I think at this stage, since both the school and the town are already developing their budgets, this summit, when it was originally discussed, was going to happen well before,
Right.
you know, well before budget guidance memos went out, well before all of that. I think at this stage, we're going to have to be working with actual numbers.
Yeah.
At which point it probably makes sense either late February, early March to have that discussion. Most likely in February, that way there's time to pivot for the town administrator's recommended budget. But even still, we know that we still have that runway with the finance committee's recommended budget. But I think we're going to have to work with actual numbers instead of, you know, forecasted numbers and see what's happening. So we'll have to.
The problem
really
with that,
convene
right,
on
though, Amy, I'm sorry, is that then everyone's starting to get baked, right? Starting to take positions, they've thought through things, now it's too late. You know, we've said we've, you know, made arrangements, negotiated, blah, 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 blah. You said budget guidance documents.
Yes.
So is, like, for the town, for the moment, as far as I'm aware, we haven't seen that. So there's assumptions baked into that already. Is there a reason why we can't be seeing that? And ideally, the school one, too, at this point?
Yeah, so the
Because
budget.
that's some high-level numbers, you'd start to be able to do the math of, like, are we starting to, like, veer off course here already?
Yeah, so there's, I have not seen the school's guidance, so I don't want to speak for what their memo
Right.
says.
I know that was.
Our memo doesn't have numbers. It just gives scenarios for how they are supposed to develop their budgets. So last year's was level funded or a 10% decrease.
Yep.
This year it's level funded, and then it's just what is it going to take to run your department? Because we've had some department heads saying that these flat numbers was making it hard for them to be able to, within the budget framework, propose, you know, hey, if I had an extra $5,000, I could do more community programming. So that way we're actually thoughtfully allocating the money.
Okay, but that sounds like we have a
It
level
specifically says
funded
there's
and one that
abs-
might be higher than level funded.
I've actually had some department heads submit lower in their optimum budget, saying, I don't need this. So,
Okay, well, make sure you give them a gold star.
I know.
Um,
Some of them are my favorites.
Okay, so getting back to the issues with the school, why don't we see where we're at with this tri-chair meeting and see where that's gonna lead us? And if there is a appetite for having a bigger meeting or something a
Mini
little bit
summit
more,
or-
a mini summit, then let me have a conversation with them and
Yeah.
see what we can facilitate.
Or even at least a sharing of, like, what is their guidance, you know? they-
Yeah, even just a joint meeting where we just
That's what I
discuss
was-
together,
Right.
even,
Yeah.
it just feels like, it feels a little disjointed, even, it's like a us and them situation instead of an us
Collaborative
situation, a
us.
collaboration, right?
Yeah.
So maybe even just a meeting where we all just come together and have a conversation where we're discussing.
Also, so we're all getting all the same information
Yeah,
equally, and, you know, we can understand each person, you know, because no disrespect to the tri-chair meetings, but it just really puts the burden on three people when you're doing it that way, as opposed to what we saw last year, which was, you know, at town meeting, we had the, you know, someone that wasn't the chair of the school committee, you know, have maybe a difference of opinion.
Well, what I saw last year is I saw a town administrator and a superintendent work very hard to come, and two chairs come to a very good budget, and then, you know, you had an issue at town meeting. So the fact is, we do have financial constraints, and we do have to work within a budget. And, you know, to Mr. Fitzgerald's credit, he worked very, very hard to make sure that we controlled our spending, and we spend a large amount of money in our school budget, and we do have to work together, and we just have to have better communication. From what I heard from the school committee, it really came down to communication, and I really understood what they were saying later, so I think we can.
Then that's all the more reason to make sure that we have a joint meeting that we're all
So we can hear their
communicating at,
concerns.
because
Sure.
we did have a very diligent superintendent, town administrator, and chairs working for that budget, and we still ended up in that position at town meeting. So this just goes to show that we can get there even with the best intentions and people feeling like we've communicated the utmost.
Yep.
We still get there and misinformation gets out and people thought a lot of different things at town meeting, so.
And it wasn't just last year where we've been there. I think it's been,
Yeah.
I think that was the third year that's
Right.
occurred. So let's talk about this. Let's have a one agenda meeting.
Right.
Let's spend the 90 minutes.
I think that would be a good idea.
2 hours,
Right. Yeah.
whatever we need, and
Yep.
let's communicate, over-communicate.
Yep.
All right, so,
Awesome.
Amy, so are you all set?
So can I just pull a Doug and ask us to be very specific about when we hope that meeting might?
January.
January. Okay, so we'll confirm with the school committee that they have a couple of dates available in January?
Yes.
Great.
And it will sit outside of our regular meeting and outside of their regular meeting.
Amazing.
Okay? All right. Okay, so, moving ahead. Thank you, Amy.
It's okay, I'm the next one too.
Sorry.
You guys are stuck with me a little longer.
I just want, can I mention one thing?
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank Amy and Patrick for their patience yesterday, as all the questions they threw at them during our meeting for the revenue estimates. So, thanks for your patience.
I would also like to say that Gino, being an engineer and understanding numbers at that level, is also extremely helpful.
Oh, good. Okay, so now let's move to the ARPA updates.
Oh, hi, that's me again.
Amy?
So,
Do we have anything on that?
to date, so for,
Do you have that up on a screen?
Is there
I
anything?
don't, I'm just reading from my notes at this point.
Do we have it in our packet?
We don't.
No, we don't.
We have it-
No packet, no screen?
but
Nope.
I think it's pretty important that we're looking at this.
We need something. Amy, can you put, do you have anything you could put up on that
Yep,
screen?
I am doing that right now. Sorry, I'm just trying to make it fit on the screen before I pull it up. Okay. Oh, good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so here are the votes that were taken. I scrolled down a little bit just because all the stuff in green at the top was voted long ago and the money is long spent. So if it's okay with the board, I'm just going to go straight down, starting with the first Glover.
God bless you.
I got one coming too.
Okay, so the 30,000 for the Glover,
Diane, could you make that larger?
that's me.
Oh, sorry, Amy. Thank you, please.
Can people at home see this?
Ooh, that may have been too large. Actually, that works.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the 30,000 for the Glover, there is an agreement with Structures North that the town administrator was supposed to sign. We are still trying to locate that signed copy. But
For the Glover?
yes, the 30,000 of the Glover.
I may even have a copy, I'm not sure. I'll
Okay.
double check, but.
Yeah, Nancy
I
was
mean,
able to get me.
They've begun that work, so,
I know, I have a couple invoices from them.
yeah.
So,
Does Structure North not have a copy?
They Nancy was able to forward it to me within the last week, but hers is the unsigned.
Oh, so I
version.
assume Structured North would not do the work unless it had a signed,
Yes.
executed contract, so maybe we could just reach out to them.
So for my purposes, I am considering this obligated because I'm confident that a signed one exists.
And what are they doing exactly? Just refresh our memory.
They are doing the detailed analysis of the outside and inside structure. They got inside, I don't know, a bunch of months ago, and did they generated a initial report, I don't know, 20 pages or whatever, of every beam, every wall, what's, keepable, what's not.
In case they want to take it down?
Exactly. No matter whether or not you kind of reinforce it and you're building from there, or you're taking it down. This is the roadmap, basically, to what you need to do.
Okay. And hold on, and what's their ETA of finishing that?
Well, that all depends on access. Based on some recent discussions, hopefully that will be in the next couple of months.
Okay, and if they can't finish it, what happens with that money?
Then some of it would go unspent. I have a reasonable level of confidence that they will be able to complete that work.
Is there any possibility that we can reclassify this, calling it Glover Historic, and get some other backup in there under historic? Is there anything we can do here that we have some type of backup and we have a little bit more flexibility in the title?
The title doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's a signed contract. that
Yes,
matters.
the actual contract.
So we just need a signed contract.
Mhm.
But can you have a backup contract? No.
No, you have to have all your,
Yeah, so if we have a contract signed for
Alright.
approximately 30,000,
Mhm.
if they only spend 29,000, you don't get to have a backup
For the other
$1,000 contract so we can spend it all.
no, and I did speak with the state on this, and there is the tiniest bit of flexibility that if you have a contract for 30,000 and say your total invoices come in at 29,500, and you shift that 500 onto something else that you already obligated, they're not gonna.
The ARPA police aren't coming?
Right.
No.
Okay.
Right,
Oh,
something
that's-
so small.
Okay.
But they did emphasize very small amounts. They're if it's 1,000 or under, we don't care. But yeah, if you're shifting $50,000, we're gonna.
They're gonna know.
Okay.
They're gonna care.
All right.
Fisherman's Beach, that is all obligated. The Glover for $64,555. I have $24,500 in quotes, grant matching, and signed agreements right now. So
4 or 5, you said.
yeah, so I have 10,000 in a quote for a tarp to go over the building. I have 5,000 in a grant match for National Historic Trust. And then I have 10,000 in Alpine residential abatement and structural conditions with asbestos.
So that's 25.
Yes.
So,
Structures north.
this comes, Doug, I think what I'm a little concerned that we don't have this money locked up. We don't know really, we really don't know where we're going with this. I'm concerned about losing money, that's all.
Yep.
Well, so I guess if there are signed contracts for 25,000, and to Doug's point, from the other Glover, I assume that holds water for this Glover, that you have reasonable expectation to believe that 25 is going to be spent, and we already have signed contracts. We're really just talking about 39, just under 39, or just under 40,000. That we.
Well, but do we also have what are our chances of something happening here? I think.
All those things that
feel?
Amy just mentioned, that she's, Nancy's been working on with Marzi as well. Feel free to comment whatever you want to say at Marzi, obviously. So all those things still fit in the same category that I said before. That additional 29 or 25 fits in that same 30. That's a very reasonable, Gino was there in a recent conversation as well. No guarantee, there's not a guarantee. But I think a reasonable expectation that we're going to have cooperation to be able to do these early steps. I will say that I think the property owner now sees that some of these steps that we take, the sooner we take them, the more we find out, the better prepared we will be to move if needed sooner, which is helpful to the owner and potential developers. So there's kind of a different thinking now about these initial steps. The next chunk of that 64 is the one that's, I think you could cast it in the same, I'm trying to be a liaison of the Historic Commission right now. You could cast it as, there's a similar reasonableness that you will spend those funds, but we do not have a specific contract that they will be spent for at this point. So that's really more the issue. That I don't think, I think given the time, it would take some focus and creativity to find a way to kind of lock that money up. And it would have to be kind of a general contract to say, we know we're going to need someone, either whether it's Structures North or someone else that is going to be able to effectuate reinforcement of the building, not just study, but actual reinforcement of the building or disassembly of the building. And that's the kind of contract that we do not have in place to do that work, even though it's highly likely that that will be needed.
So what do we do to ensure that we can not lose that money? Or do we say, do we have a plan B in the event it doesn't look like we're going to have that money, just move it into the sewer?
I think for Plan B, I know that everyone was probably hoping this was the last meeting of calendar 24.
It is.
It is.
But if the board wants to do a virtual meeting for December 30th to revote, just in case.
Why can't the board vote right now, put a condition, do a conditional?
To say
If this doesn't happen by X, we allocate that.
We go to
39,000
Plan B.
Whatever.
You can do that.
Else you-
So that you are keeping the window open for historic, but if it looks like we can't make it, we can jump on Plan B.
I would just ask that the vote be specific to say if contracts are not in my office, signed by a date.
Gotcha.
Ideally not on the 31st.
Or
Right.
close of business on the 30th,
Right.
for instance.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because especially if we're shifting it to sewer work, I know Gino can easily get a contract for the additional sewer work.
Well, there might be other
quickly.
things that we might want to talk about in that regards.
And maybe not. Okay, what else is
I've already made a proposal in
climate
that
action,
regards.
resiliency?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you already talked about the item 22, line at 22 resiliency project.
Not yet.
Tomorrow is the bid opening, so I know that we allocated $200,000, but we don't know what the final number would be. So I would encourage you, maybe, it could go over, or it could be under, so we don't know. That was the estimate, but we're not quite sure. We'll know tomorrow after 11 o'clock.
So we potentially have more money in flex, is that what we're saying?
Or less.
Or less.
Or less?
Depending
Yes.
how the bid comes in.
We need a meeting.
We need
So
to
are
be-
we saying that if the resiliency, so this is on the resiliency consultant,
No, the last line, the
last
resiliency
line.
project,
or project?
Yeah.
and then ignore the grant match.
Okay, so are we going to we could take a motion on that tonight as well to,
Yeah, but
No.
now it's gonna get real sticky, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like borrow big from this, borrow from that, what happens here, what happens there, and if Amy doesn't
We need
have
real
the
data.
balance, or has too much, right, then what? So,
Right. Sadly, we need a meeting on the 30th in real data.
I mean, I could think of a way, assuming things are less, we could take a vote right now to reallocate them to whatever we decide to reallocate them to.
And then assuming if it's more.
If it's more,
we have
then
to come
maybe,
back.
then maybe we have to come back. Or we give some range right now to go ahead or whatever, but. So while we're pondering that, on the climate action resiliency consultant, much to my chagrin, it looks like we're only gonna spend $25,000 of that.
That's correct, so that's what I have committed for that.
Right.
So we have 50.
So we have 50 there too.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
We're doing great stuff with $25,000.
That's
but-
right.
I would also like to say that the Pine Street, due to the carrying costs, did go 112,000 over, so maybe that's where we put the extra to net that one out.
See the 112 up there.
Yeah.
The redevelopment of the housing feasibility study, the Housing Authority did vote for that, so I am in talks with their chair to get the signed agreement for that, so that 50,000 is on its way to be committed.
So hold on,
So that full 50,000?
Mm-hmm.
So you we will have a feasibility study?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yes. Yep, I have in my many pages, Massachusetts Partnership for Housing. They were recommended by EOHLC, please don't ask me what that stands for, to do a study on the Cherry Sheet property. So they are going to spend that. The two issues that need to be addressed is a land infrastructure survey, as well as an environmental history study. So both of those will be done for the 50,000, and I will get the paperwork drawn up with the Housing Authority.
And so what does that actually mean? Like, what is the results of these studies? What are we looking, who's David, you're the liaison, right? What does that mean?
What is?
Like, what are we really getting from this? How is this gonna improve the,
Well, you basically have to do a feasibility study before you can look at potential redevelopment of our public housing stock. So it was the decision of the chair, Mr. Patsios, as well as the executive director, Mr. Johnson, to look at, to focus on the Cherry Street family units first and foremost. I think
Okay.
that's where the greatest need is, and that's where there may be the greatest flexibility to potentially add units.
And if you have these types of reports, then you need
Grant.
these to kind of play in the next
To
round,
solicit
basically,
grants.
right?
okay.
As much as you don't want to spend it, you have to spend it to get to the next.
No, I
step.
do wanna spend it. I just
No, I
wanna know.
You don't like to spend it on studies that don't, just sit on the shelf and
Right.
nothing happens to them.
I like studies that
Yeah.
work. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Amy, could I ask you to maybe just make notes where that 112 is next to each of these categories that we're under, so that we get kind of like a running tally?
Yes.
Well, but we have this public health bucket of 122,000 that may be able to take care of that whole thing.
Oh, sure, yeah, but I just wanted to see it. so that
Oh,
you
the
get
other
an
things,
idea.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, okay.
The other lines that we're
I thought you meant
under.
where we plug it, yeah.
No.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Amy, there should be 50 there? Oh, we're spending an additional 25 on top of the
No,
10,
total.
or we're only spending 25 for climate action?
No, 25.
Just 25 total?
Yes, so we already,
So
we
that
only
should be
paid one
50.
invoice.
So that
Yep.
should be 50.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
No.
50. yeah.
15.
55.
50, because we
Oh,
allocated
1.5.
75.
Yep.
And we're only spending 25.
So nothing there.
Sorry, my little Teams thing is actually blocking that column for me. Okay,
Perfect.
that one's
So the,
Townwide
that's-
economic
yeah.
development study, we're basically using all that up, Marcy?
Yes.
I mean, there's
believe I
like
have-
5,000 left
I
or
have
something.
10,000 left, so I have a $5,000 contract with Baker Tilly,
Yes.
and that's all I have.
You have how much left with Baker Tilly?
I have a $50,000 commitment with Baker Tilly of the 60, so I have 10,000 left.
What
Okay.
about
Okay.
the appraisal?
The what?
The appraisal.
we
Appraisal.
paid for separate, I think.
Did that come from somewhere
Separate
else?
source of funding
No, the appraisal should have gone in there.
from ARPA funding? Okay, so that has not been, I have not processed that payment yet.
Do we know how much it's for?
Yep,
It's under 3,000, I think.
So let's say
So
that's,
we'll
So let's say that's
7,000.
5,000, I mean, you know.
there's 7-ish there.
Right, okay. Okay, so public health, are we on that?
Or what about the MS4?
Is that all committed?
MS4 is completely committed. If it is a sewer project, Gino committed it as soon as you guys voted it.
So it just says 0 spent, but that's because we just haven't.
The invoice hasn't
Yeah.
come through yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Public
Public
health
health.
projects, the big bucket.
Yeah,
Yes.
big, huge bucket.
So the public health bucket, they have committed all but $9.35 of their bucket. So the majority of it.
Good for them. Wow.
The majority of it went through RFP, and a $90,000 contract was awarded for mental health, for group therapy and online support groups. So they will be offering on-site group therapy, on-site support groups for Swampscott residents ages 18 and older in Swampscott in order to address the ongoing mental health challenges faced due to the COVID-19 pandemic, including trauma, loss, grief, caregiver stress, social isolation, stress, and burnout. They will also provide a mindfulness support group at Swampscott High School for interested high school students to be held weekly after school throughout the school year. And this will run from January 2025 through December 1st, 2026.
And that was $90,000, a $90,000
Mhm.
contract, did you say?
Yep, and for anything that references the school, the health department has already spoken with the superintendent and gotten that coordinated.
So do we know what the other 32,000?
Yes, so there will be mental health support groups, mental health programs for Swampscott residents 18 and older. So there will be community meditation programs, triple P positive programming through Aspire, mindful parenting and stress reduction series, trauma-informed trainings, twice of which there'll be 3 series of that. 2 will be for the faculty and staff at Swampscott Public Schools, and 1 will be available for community members. There will also be a mental health and wellness speaker series that the health department will be putting on. And then a very small amount, $489, of which will be spent on the composting initiatives.
So there's no issue with some of those funds being spent at the school because of the, like, I thought we couldn't spend it on the school because of ESSER.
We can't give it to the school.
Okay.
So we're working together.
So similar with the opioid funds.
Got it.
Like,
Okay, great.
we can't give it to anyone, but they can partner with whoever they need to. So originally, they did want to do a reading program with the school, but after speaking with the superintendent, they realized that would not be a valuable impact to the school in the way that it could be done, and that was where these initiatives came from.
So that last list that you just read was the stuff of the additional $30,000?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they have.
Okay, this all sounds kind of the same, but just 2 different contracts or something? Or?
Yeah, so I have
Okay.
contracts and signed agreements for all but $9.35 of that $122,000.
$9. Oh.
Yeah.
Our police are not coming after it.
Don't spend it all in one place.
Okay.
Yeah, and then as Margie said, the resiliency projects, we have the bid opening tomorrow, and we.
What's the timeline on that?
Our plan is to award the bid by next week, review all the references for the consultants tomorrow afternoon, hopefully, and Monday and Tuesday check in, and definitely award the contract by the last week of December.
And do you feel pretty confident we're going to have a number of people looking at?
Yes, we did have several consultants who pulled the bid, and we already received 1 proposal earlier
We just
today.
don't know if it's going
Right.
to use the full funds, right?
Well, so the bid opening will take place tomorrow, so right now, everything is, the 1 proposal that we received, it's still sealed, we can't open it up till
Yep,
tomorrow,
right,
11
right.
o'clock. But at least we have the 1 proposal, so whatever it is, right, at least we'll be able
So
to.
we better hope that it's at least 16,000 under.
Yeah, and I will say, with all the procurement that we've dealt with, most of those bids walk in an hour or 2 before the opening.
Yep.
Okay.
So I will keep the board informed. I will email you as I have updates please do not reply at all.
Just to summarize, so we're just short here, 16,238.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we want to talk about that?
Sure.
I mean, otherwise, we have to have a meeting to talk about it, right? Because we can't, we either have to find $16,238 to meet the needs of this overage, or we have to move it from another spot.
Yeah, I will say,
Because we've already closed on Pine Street, so
Yeah.
we've already paid that.
there are the tarp for the Glover and the asbestos. I have seen the quotes, I have not received signed ones. So I don't know if those are moving forward or not.
Okay, so it looks like we might have to have a virtual meeting
I'm sorry.
by the end of,
It's not your fault.
like at the end of the month. So, all right, so we're gonna play it by ear,
Okay.
if we have to.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
A lot of good stuff.
Great.
I just have one quick question on the Pine Street.
Yes.
Have we already absorbed in last year's accounts any of the legal fees? Is there a chance that that wouldn't even hit ARPA?
Some of the legal costs in FY24 hit the legal budget in FY24 general fund and did not hit the ARPA.
What are we counting it towards ARPA here?
Mm-mm. This
Oh,
is
we're
only
not even
stuff actually charged to ARPA.
Okay, I got it.
I will do a full accounting and report to you your total cost.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to commend the public health office for all the work to spend those funds in a very meaningful way.
Working with the schools.
Working with the schools to do that, because the purpose of ARPA was to sort of fill gaps that happened because of COVID, and this is exactly what does that in a true way for adults, for teens, for the school system. So I just want to say thank you for them for doing that.
And that shout out should go to our public health nurse, Nia Illingworth. She spent so much time and stressed so much trying to make sure that she was really stretching these dollars to give the most community impact and really spread it over the full timeline that we can spend that money.
Some of the best ARPA money we'll spend.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So next on our agenda is a discussion on St. John's parking lot. We just have a little handout here just so people can follow along. And I just want to start by saying, following our meeting in May, there was a large open meeting for the town after the library proposal hit. Our town administrator promised that we would have more public meetings. The reason why we didn't form a committee or have more public meetings was because we had the opportunity to start to talk to Monsignor McLaughlin at St. John's, and we are in the process of negotiating to buy that parking lot. We have an opportunity, and that's why everything slowed down. The reason being is if we have an opportunity to buy the parking lot and combine both of those lots, it looks like we would be able to accomplish everything that had been discussed at all the open meetings. So Marcy's just going to walk us through what a timeline would look like. This is just a discussion so we can just get it out there. We will be continuing to have executive sessions to discuss the deal with the Monsignor and the Archdiocese, but I think this will be great for the town.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Go ahead, Marcy.
So just quickly, I wanted to remind everybody of the process that we have.
Sir, please sit down, sir. Please sit down and leave. Please sit down and leave. Could you ask your friend to leave?
Nobody's taking the parking lot, sir.
Please leave, sir.
Pay for it.
Thank you. Please leave, sir. Thank you, sir. Please leave. Please leave. Thank you, sir. Please leave. Please leave. Please leave.
So if we could
Thank you.
advance to the-
Please
if we
leave.
could Advance to the next slide. I
Go ahead,
would like
Marzie.
to
Sorry.
be brief, just to go through the process today, just to remind everybody what has happened for over the past couple of years and where we are in the redevelopment of the Hawthorne, or at least having the continue a discussion for the redevelopment of the Hawthorne. So as you can see, in April of '22, town meeting approved acquisition and funding for the Hawthorne. December of that year, the town meeting actually took a vote and acquired the Hawthorne parcel, and the town retained the services of HDR architects to assist us with the redevelopment or the renderings of the parcel. In January, we had an amazing idea exchange where we had over 400 individuals who attended and really shared their ideas for the parcel and to begin the thought process in regards to the best and the highest use for the parcel, and to hear what should be located on the site. In April, our consultant presented us with 3 scenarios. All of them showed somewhat diverse concept, but each of them included an open space concept. Some of them had architectural architectural features, others did not. And in May of this year, we did sort of scale down the 3 scenarios into a concept for a library. As you know, the library concept was less than enthusiastic in regards to the feedback that we received from our residents. So therefore, we wanted to go back, as Mary Ellen had stated, to really have a more aggressive public participatory process to really look at the redevelopment of the site. If we can go to the next slide, Diane. So now the next steps in regards to engage our community in the redevelopment process, we had outlined a 5-phase approach. The first one is to request a select board to establish or create a 9-member committee that would really assist with the public process. And our recommendation or our request would be to have 2 members from the committee B from the planning board, 2 from finance committee, 1 member from open space and or conservation commission, and then 4 residents that would have professional backgrounds either in architecture or engineering. This group would really guide us into the next phase, which would be the second phase, that would really look at the redevelopment process, look what we have established so far, where are we in regards to the plans, really try to digest them a little bit more, and then go back and relook at the ideas, find out what are the critical issues that we really wanted to take away from the process that has occurred to date. We'll look at generating additional ideas, combining some ideas maybe, really have a clear outcome in regards to what's the plan, what is it that we want. So really a place, phase 2 would be a place for us to look where we have been and sort of like what is it that we want. We will also task this advisory committee to develop a plan of actions. This way we will know sort of into going into phase 2 and 3 and 4 to find out how do we narrow down the idea options, because I think that was one issue when we narrowed down from the 3 concepts to the 1 to library. I think the community, or the community, I should say, all our residents felt like something maybe might have been lost. And again, each of the phases will have a really thoughtful public participatory process and a forum where people, again, can share ideas, look what we have done, and really advance the project. So again, phase 3 would be just narrow down the ideas, share all of the findings through the public process. Phase 4 would be to secure this design team to really be able to have a contract drawings and really a document where we are ready to bid, find what is the outcome of the process that we wanted to develop, and start construction, and obviously phase five would be the completion of the project and a ribbon cutting. And like Mary Ellen, like you stated, I think that, the acquisition of the parking lot would really assist with the spatial needs of the area. Because I think that we've heard from a lot of residents in regards to, geez, I wish that we could have additional features, or, we want to see architectural features or other things, and hopefully having a little bit more land could assist with the process. One thing I also did wanted to mention is that there are grant fundings that are available for acquisition of parkland. There is a next round of funding is this coming up January 9th is the deadline for submission. We or communities are eligible to apply for up to $1 million in funding for acquisitions. Unfortunately, this year, we're not able to apply for it because we will not be able to procure an appraisal for the site. It has to be a certain appraisal called the Yellow Book appraisal, which is a federal appraisal, because this will be federal funding that will be coming our way. There will be next year in the earlier part of the year, as well as later during the year, there'll be the same round of funding will be available and coming up.
So I have a quick question. If we were able to get a Yellow Book appraisal, is the deadline, if we were able to get one between now and January 7th, would we still qualify?
Unfortunately, we will not, because the state staff that reviews them, they will not have enough time to review the Yellow Book appraisal.
Who's the state staff?
It's Melissa Cryan from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
Can I have Doug call her?
I mean, I think they're sort of very clear in regards to, their
Okay.
timelines.
Questions?
Yeah, I'm kind of confused about this, to be honest, because we don't know what's going to happen with the church parking lot. We don't really have a good idea whether or not that's a good idea or not. And yet we're going to seat a committee that won't know that information. I mean, even if we thought it was a good idea, you'd need money from town meetings until May. So I guess I just don't understand kind of like the timing of this. And then I have other thoughts about this committee when it's seated, but I guess that's the first thing that I don't understand how we can move this forward right now.
So, go ahead, Marzi.
No.
Okay, so I can answer that. So we are finalizing our negotiations with the church, and I think that we need to start discussing how to move forward and to have more community involvement. So what we could do is we could say, let's seat a committee to get opinions, and we could task the committee to looking at it. If we were to purchase that, what would the outcome be for 2 plots together, or what would it be if we only had 1 plot, just the Hawthorne? But I think that by putting a committee together, we can start getting feedback, information, and start moving this ball forward. And I think that, it's important. Just this is just a recommendation. So whatever your input is, just.
Yeah, I think I can roll with what you just said. So in terms of the people on the committee, is your intention to like literally decide this tonight, and you're going to be soliciting people like right away, or is this kind of like we're just putting this out there, we're going to mull it over, and we're going to come back next meeting or whatever and think about the really?
I think what we should do is put it out there and let people start sending in applications, whatever, anybody who's interested, just start to build a database on who's interested in getting onto this committee, and then bring it back, and let's start talking in public.
Yes. So the last thing I'd say, and then I'll shut up, is I think there's a little bit of imbalance here. Like the planning board, like the finance committee, I respect the Concom kind of criticality in that particular zone there. I think that's almost a requirement. The resident experts, love open space, but I think it needs to be a balance with, I mean, if that, you know, the fundamental crucible here, right, is like how much open space, how much economic activity on that space, right? So I think either you don't have a vested interest at all in those two camps, or you have kind of like one of each.
So you're saying have two, so what are you saying here? You're
Either
saying-
add someone that's kind of, you know,
So you're
people
saying
that
two
really wants to
finance-
like maximize or like have it be a high revenue producing area.
Okay.
Or you don't have the open space person there because you just let all these kind of technical experts basically
Okay.
be kind of facilitators.
You just want to have, so you want to have more balance?
I have
You got it.
a couple of observations about the committee. That's okay. Marzie, do you recall how many folks were on the Hadley Reeves committee?
Oh, yeah.
Geez, that was a really large committee.
Yep, like 20,
Over
right?
tw- over
20,
20.
over 20.
But that, they also don't remember how they broke
Yep.
down into the
Yep.
separate.
No, totally understand, but even if it was over, say it was 24, that means if they broke down into even numbered groups, there was 8 people in each group. So I don't think the committee's big enough. And I think that to have only 4 residents experts and to sort of, I think we should definitely have resident experts in architecture and engineering. I think we should try to find a grant writer, so Marzie's not doing this all on her own, so she has somebody to have a sounding board to bounce ideas off of. And then I think sometimes the problem with seating committees is that we pull from other committees' members, right? And that there's no new people involved. And so we get into this cycle of the same folks making the same decisions, and then the people who aren't involved say, well, we never got a chance to be involved because it just came from these other subsections. So I do think that we need to have 2 or more just open seats. So regardless of their expertise, if they live in town and they're interested in being on this committee, they should be able to apply and get on the committee.
Okay.
I just think it's more fair.
Sounds good.
So do you think a committee of 11 members? Is that what we
Should
are
be an
right
even
now?
number, I would think.
Yeah, sounds good. No, you want an odd number,
Why?
For
in case somebody has to vote or quorum.
But if you break out into groups, it's not even.
So I'll work with Diane and Jody to advertise
one is
it
to break
and put it in the newsletter as well
But there may
as.
be multiple
But there may be
things, and
multiple
maybe
things.
multiple
Right.
Yeah, there may be
avenues to
subgroups.
explore.
Yeah, I'm fine with
Okay,
odd or even, but I just think the more public involvement, the better.
absolutely. Okay, thank you.
And then I think the other issue with creating committees is they get created and then they don't have direction, right? So we should be clear, we should think about and be very clear to them going forward from here, what we hope they might accomplish, not how or what, but not what, like in the end, the solution, but
Parameters.
sort of like the parameters, the guardrails, to be like, we want them to engage the public at least 3 times. We want them to, some guidelines for them so that we can set them up to be successful.
Thank you.
David?
Yeah, so just a few things. First off, I think this is an interesting idea. It's a good idea. I still, we did spend money on a consultant and had a report. One of the things that I was trying to get out of that report was, what do we have if we are potentially to combine these parcels that we do not already have with the Hawthorne? I think that question remains unanswered. I don't think we need to seat a committee to learn that information, but I would like to have some of that information available, and if Baker Tilly can help us get to that answer sooner rather than later, I think that will only help give this committee direction. Furthermore, last month we passed the CPA in Swampscott. So I just want to go on record saying that I believe that this would be a great use. We haven't even seated the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee as of yet, but I think that the CPA funds would be a great source of funding for the potential acquisition of this parking lot, should the committee decide that they want to move forward in that form and fashion. So I just want to go on record as saying that. I look forward to learning more from Baker Tilly, and I'm glad to have this conversation.
Is Baker Tilly still open? I mean, are we?
Yes, so we have, I need to follow up with Doug because we do have a copy of a draft report that wanted to review, and I'm happy to, if you think we should, if it's available, I'll share it with the select board, with all the
Oh,
members.
everybody has it.
So everybody see the report, so if people have more questions or requests like David had?
All right,
Yeah, we've seen it.
all right, all right.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure, 'cause
We all have it.
The other, I just had another thought. That's okay, giving me eyes, but I still have it.
Oh, no, yeah.
So I brought up grant writers because obviously one way we could subsidize some of the cost of this is through grants, but we should also have somebody, I know finance committee's on here, but if there's anybody else who wants to volunteer to be on this committee related to municipal finance, like one of the reasons that the library was worth looking at was because there was a function to pay for it in a large scale to build it, there was a state aid to get it done. And I'm not saying that should be the driver for this committee, like only because somebody else is gonna pay for it, we should do it, but it has to be a thought process because they can come up with a beautiful plan, and if we can't execute it within our financial constraints, then what's the point?
Yep.
And whether that means we have a conversation within the plan to say, okay, is this financially feasible? And if it's not financially feasible, it fulfills something the community needs so much so that we don't care that it's not financially feasible in the guardrails and we'll work that part out. Or we, really try to say, these are the boundaries that we know of right now exist, and we're gonna wanna stay within those boundaries.
Okay.
So I have a couple comments myself, even though you're giving me the eyes too, Fletcher.
I'm not giving anybody, okay, this is what I look like under fluorescent lights.
So we had a community forum about this in this room, probably, I think it was June, the beginning of the summer, and it was very well attended. So I think we're probably 3 months too late in getting this off the ground. I think it's really incumbent upon us to get this moving, because I think that the people that attended, the residents that attended, made it very clear that while they weren't happy with the library proposal, they had opinions, and they were very interested in what happens to this property. And I think that it's just been languishing, kind of sitting there, and it's been on the back burner, and I think it really should be a focal point right now. So I think it's, however we decide to, whatever this committee is comprised of ultimately, we can't keep kicking it down the road. We need to really action it. We need to get it moving.
I just want to be really clear. We have been negotiating with the church to get to the point we're at, and we're pretty close right now. So to have started committees and gone a different direction, it would have been a little bit too quick. But I think
I
your
understand that point, but my
hold on a
point
second.
is
Your
not
point
about,
of we need to go right away, I'm 100% on board with that.
my point is not about the additional lot. It's about that actual property, the Hawthorne itself. And while we have, been in discussion, about the adjacent lot, my point is that Hawthorne property has been sitting there, and we need to really focus on, whether it's by itself or with the lot. We just need to get people seated, figure out how we're gonna do it, and start getting the community input that we need, because it was certainly a big concern when we had that first forum.
It was. Okay. All set?
Yep, 11 members, and I'll work with Diana and Jody on notification or advertising the availability for members.
Okay, so moving along, now we move to discussion and possible vote to approve the land disposition agreement, ground lease for 10 New Ocean Street and 1224 Pine Street. And this is now,
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. So I move the land development agreement be adjusted to reflect the preference of VFW Post 1240, with the VFW Post 1240 remaining at 10 New Ocean Street, and approximately 40 units of affordable housing with veterans preference be constructed solely on the 12 to 24 Pine Street parcel.
do you have a second?
Sure.
Okay.
For discussion, obviously.
Yep.
Discussion?
Yep. So, yeah, so tonight, once again, we have the land development agreement on our agenda. You know, we did make a motion, but signing the land development agreement as presented and relocating the post to Reach Arts with no existing zoning, no money, no parking at Reach Arts, no discussion with Reach Arts neighbors, no support from the VFW, and no plan highlights or lowlights what the select board has in front of them, hence my motion. I cannot for the life of me figure out how this is a good idea. Don't want to point fingers tonight, but I want to work on solutions to the problem. Last weekend, I met with the veterans twice, once on Saturday and again in a membership meeting with the VFW on Sunday with my colleague Doug Thompson. No time did anyone in the VFW leadership express excitement or support to move to Reach Arts on anything other than a temporary basis hard stop. It is and continues to be the preference of the VFW to remain in their post. The post they built themselves with their money. The post they were able to secure by transferring 5 buildable lots in the Foster's Dam area of Swampscott to the town. The same town which is now considering removing the veterans from their post. As a board, we should do everything we can do to accommodate what I consider to be a very reasonable request from VFW leadership. Absent that, the original RFP response from the developer included a 1,500 square foot plus or minus new post, as well as meeting spaces and offices. And upon careful consideration from the VFW membership, they believe the original response to the RFP may be workable and viable for them. Additionally, the select board had previously approved this plan, which then started the negotiation of the land development agreement with the developer, B'nai B'rith, in the first place. It should be noted the VFW is giving considerably, as you know, in the other scenario, the new space would be smaller than what they currently have, but they do want to work collaboratively with the town. The opinion of the VFW and the veterans was solicited by the select board, and they've spoken and provided us with a letter in writing stating that they are adamant that a permanent move to 89 Burl Street is not a viable option. We should listen. The VFW wants to make the Veterans Housing Project work. However, it seems that some members of this board are characterizing the choice as pro-veterans affordable housing versus the VFW post and attempting to drive a wedge between housing advocates and veterans, which is completely unacceptable. Relocating the post against the will of the veterans away from the Veterans Housing Project does far more harm than good and is counterintuitive to having the post, housing, and services all in one location. That's the option that was originally presented to the select board in B'nai B'rith's original RFP response. The move to Reach Arts is fraught with issues. Last Saturday, we toured the building with Gino Cresta, Marzi Galaska, members of VFW leadership, as well as Doug Dubin and architect Ryan Connor. Looking at only the addition of an elevator, a full update of electrical and added sprinklers, the cost to bring the building into compliance would be a minimum of $500,000, if not more, likely more. And while the building is kind of sort of handicap accessible in the basement, it's not fully ADA compliant. Making it fully ADA compliant would again cost additional time and additional money. This is not without any other additions, accommodations, or improvements on site to make the structure remotely viable. Also, the 800-pound gorilla is the utter lack of parking on site or on the street, which will be an enormous problem, certainly a bigger issue if this arrangement is made permanent. All of which, furthermore, with the construction, all of which would have to occur with a partner, the town of Swampscott, who has not lived up to any of its past promises concerning the veterans. Why would this time be any different? And from my first row seat, honestly, I don't believe it would be. And is this even possible from a zoning perspective? The building's located in our planned development district, a PDD, which allows by right 1 to 3 units of housing. The adjacent zoning of parcels around the Reach Arts building is A2 and A4, which does not allow for club, lodges, or fraternal organizations in A2 or A4, even by special permit. Essentially, a vote tonight in favor of the LDA as presented in our packets could make these veterans and VFW Post 1240 homeless veterans. The irony of all ironies, as we're attempting to construct veteran senior housing without a coherent plan to relocate the existing post. My position has not changed. I'm completely against moving the veterans from their existing posts against their will. Both the post and the veterans housing can coexist on Pine Street. Per the developer, it is feasible and viable. We, Doug Thompson and myself, spoke to the developer, and this can happen. However, it should be noted the developer has extreme pressure applied by the chair to move forward with the plan as presented in our packet this evening, which in my view is not in the best interest of the veterans or the town as a whole, with a cost of redevelopment and repositioning and construction in Reach Arts that to date is unquantifiable. I would welcome the opportunity of my colleague Doug Thompson to walk us through the options that I believe are also still available. Doug?
Hold on a minute. While we're having a conversation, you just made a comment that there's pressure from the chair. I'm sorry, David, but you need to stop attacking my character and making things up. You've got to stop lying out there.
Mary Ellen?
That is just
Mary Ellen,
not
I wish
the
I was.
case.
I were telling. I wish this was a lie. I had a call with Yara and with Holly Grace and with Doug on the call, and they told us in no uncertain terms that you had called and you had said that if the developer did not go down the path that you were recommending, that your support was going to be pulled from this project, as well as the support of the former chair of the planning board. That was said by B'nai B'rith.
I'm sorry,
Doug
but
was
I
on the
don't-
call.
I don't believe that for a minute, but.
Okay.
Was that said, Doug?
Yes.
So then they said something that wasn't, that was completely false.
Well,
So, go ahead, Doug.
Can I just get clarity before Doug starts?
Yeah.
What is your motion?
my motion is that the LDA be reflected to adjust the preference of the VFW post 1240, with the post remaining at 10 New Ocean Street, with approximately 40 units of housing veterans preference to be constructed solely at 12 to 24 Pine Street.
So is your motion to, I mean, the veterans came forward, or the Post, I'm sorry, issued a letter, right? Which said that they were looking for more space and more units, less units and more space. So is that your motion, or is back to the original viable option B'nai presented to keep the Post inside at 15-ish? No, it's even another situation.
It's the one the vets came up with, basically, keep the post as is.
Yep.
Literally. And the option of.
Just build it on one lot.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the motion.
Yes.
Yep.
Keep the Post in its spot, put it on one lot.
Yep. So I'll say that, and it's understandable why you have the question, because, we've had various discussions about trying to figure out the path here. And so I think that just shows that, at least for me, like, this is still kind of a little bit of a developing story. But I understand, you can't go on forever. So my little way of doing things here, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I brought my markers.
I saw.
But, if anyone wants me to get up, I'll actually get up and write them down. But I'll just share them verbally to start with. So the way I had to just kind of process this, there's just so many different moving pieces, for me, pros and cons of all these different options. So veterans, obviously this is, a project for the veterans, but it can't come at, disproportionate negative impact for the neighbors. So obviously that's kind of the crux of the matter, I assume, for all of us. So in all the options, and certain, there's three options as far as I'm concerned. One that David just mentioned, again, post stays exactly where it is, no cost to do basically anything there, that's that. And B'nai B'rith is 100% focused on building housing on the other site. No post within it, just veterans, housing, and service component. That's one. The second one is that tear down the post, vets move temporarily, and rebuild a brand new housing and post all integrated. And then the third option is where tear down the post, just build housing on both those sites, and the post moves permanently, right? So those are my three options and what I'm contrasting. So in terms of like keeping the post as is and building housing next door, clearly this is the vet's first choice. For me, the fact that they used their own money to build that post is important. And with this option, there's no disruption for their membership. It doesn't cost anybody any money to move the vets and make temporary or permanent improvements at Reach Arts. It does achieve this kind of keeping the post and the housing kind of separate, not commingled in the same building, but still kind of creates this initial vision of the Veterans Crossing, having all these things kind of integrated. That was where this all started. It doesn't require any change to the liquor license or entertainment license or any zoning issues that might come up by moving the vets to Reach Arts. The thing that maybe I was last to the party to understand this, but like this is not only really what the vets want, but this is like the least expensive option to the town. We still get the maximum rent payment from B'nai B'rith, and we're not expending anything for a temporary or permanent move to Reach Arts. It's also clearly consistent with the town meeting vote. So there's a thing kind of hanging out there about what the implications are about town meeting and what the vote was and the intention. Clearly doing this option takes that off the table.
Well, I don't think it does.
About the post.
Yeah, because if you're going to use the argument to say you can't move the post to Reach because the town meeting vote doesn't support it, then the town meeting vote says that the post will be inside the new building, and it'll use both parcels. So you're getting into the same issue that the town meeting vote doesn't reflect exactly what you're wanting to do. And I'm not taking a position on whether or not I agree with your motion. I'm just saying logically, if you're going to use the argument of the words of the town meeting vote against moving them to Reach, then you also would have that same argument against leaving them where they are and not using both parcels to build the building with the post inside, because I believe that is what the town meeting vote. The argument against moving the town meeting, moving them to Reach would say that the post has to be inside. That is why we can't.
Doesn't say inside.
Well, what does it say? A new post, a new post.
It says inclusion of a new post in these two parcels.
Okay.
The last thing is that what I think is even clearer is that this approach is consistent with the RFP. I think there's been discussion, concern about whether or not what the requirement was of the RFP and whether or not if you have it completely off-site, that's consistent with the RFP.
Again, I have to make the same argument that if the RFP required the post to be inside in order to get to the argument as to why you can't move them to Reach, then logically, how could you say that not having the post inside, even though you're not touching the post? I get what you're trying to say, but it can't be against one and for the other if you're actually ending up with the same scenario, which is the post is not inside.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
The cons to this, from my, hearing what people are saying, the number one, although I haven't actually heard it tonight per se, but I think is kind of, well, what I have heard tonight is people saying that it would be 5 floors. Can we please, let's stick with the facts that the 4 floors, this scenario. And so we're really comparing 3 floors to 4 floors.
With the mechanics on top of either of those scenarios.
Of course.
So, and both elevated. So we're really
Absolutely.
looking at 4 and 5 stories.
But Mary Ellen, that confuses the issue, because when you go and think about the reference point that people have is like the Westcott right now. And that building is truly 5 stories. Like the stuff about mechanicals, you're not even gonna see the mechanicals, okay? So you don't count that in like people's perception or what the
You actually do see the mechanicals. You can see the mechanicals
Not on
in
the top of
Westport.
a 4-story building.
But we are talking about one size versus another size.
Yeah,
So
one
that's-
floor, absolutely, no doubt about that.
We're talking about size.
12 feet, absolutely,
Mhm.
no doubt about it. And so if you look at the sun angles of what that 12 feet impacts, there are literally, I can count on one hand, the number of houses that will have about an hour of sun impact because of that 12 feet, okay?
Mhm.
Just to be like, we can all kind of sit here and feel like, one story is gonna just like tower over. This isn't Westcott, it's not Pittman Road, it's not the same thing. It is gonna impact some people. I'm putting it in a con, no doubt about it. But I'm also trying to kind of like be factual about literally who will be impacted and how they will be impacted. Because, there's a lot of concern about number of units or number of people or number of cars. That's gonna be the same no matter what, right? Like, more busyness, more traffic, whatever it is, like none of these options are any different in that regard. Okay, so I think I don't think I need to kind of do the moving to recharge permanently version, because it's all basically just the flip of everything I just said, right? The one in the middle is the new post inside the new building and a temporary move to recharge. So this is the vet's second choice. If we're going to take down the post, it does seem reasonable that we need to make sure that there is a real post to replace it.
But Doug, are you talking towards the motion? Because don't we have a motion here don't we have one motion?
We do.
For.
We do. Yeah, that's fine. I can pause on this if,
Or are you looking to make an amendment to the motion?
No.
Okay.
No.
So we have a motion on the floor.
Can I just ask how that's not pertinent to the motion?
Well, because it's making the motion different, isn't it?
No.
Well, it's
going to-
contextualized.
No, it's
like why-
contextualizing the
Explain it.
motion. I think the conversation's gonna happen regardless,
Okay.
Yeah.
so we might as well just have it.
Go ahead.
And it's only a couple more minutes. So this one here, maybe even more so to your points, Katie, is consistent with the town meeting vote and is very consistent with the RFP. The cons of this is that probably this option is the most expensive to the town, because we are having to move the vets temporarily, make investments in Reach Arts for 2 years or whatever it's going to take. At the same time, we're building a brand new post that costs money from the developer's perspective that they're going to pass along to us. So the rent payment that we're going to get is going to be much less, and then we're going to have to build out the new post. I was a bigger fan of that until I actually kind of went through this exercise and really thought about the ramifications there.
Could I also just add that the building is going to be exactly the same size? So all the cons for the neighbors fall in this category also?
Absolutely.
So there's
I'm getting there, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. First con, well, that was the first one, most expensive in town. Second one is still 4 floors. You do have, like, for the temporary move, you do have the parking and zoning issues that David alluded to, and you get into with kind of a permanent move of the post to the Reach Arts building. So, I mean, I guess one virtue I didn't say here is that it would be a brand new post, state the obvious in this scenario. So that is kind of one virtue of the pain or the additional cost you go through is you actually have a brand new post. But I don't hear like that's really fundamentally the issue, that like we really need a brand new post. In fact, clearly the vets are happy with what they have right now. So.
Could I add another con to your virtual whiteboard?
Sure. Well, maybe I'll wait until hear what it's before I say.
Oh, okay. I know that I have mentioned this in the past. I believe that we had some representatives from Salem Post. Mary Ellen, you can maybe expand more on this, but the detriment of potentially having the post in the same building as 42 units of veterans housing, and how that may preclude veterans who need housing from living in that building because the post would be attached to it, literally attached in their building, in their living space. Whether it's, for substance abuse reasons or other reasons, that actually might deter folks from being able to live in that building.
I appreciate your support for option one.
That's just a non-support for options. I mean, really, I think, having gone through the exercise, there are really two options here.
Yeah.
The post doesn't go anywhere, it stays exactly the way it is, and you build it all in one lot next door, or you take the posts down, move them to Reach, and build 3 stories on 2 lots. I understand the second option is deemed viable by the developer, and it's important that we go through the pros and cons, but considering what we've just discussed, if we really are narrowing down options, all of the pros for that live with the pros for the first option, and there are more cons than there are cons in the first option. So to me, it makes sense to just take that option off the table. Also, I don't believe the veterans, they called it I'm asking now, they called it like the second best option, but the developer has stated that they could not add any additional space. They would not be willing to remove a unit, 2 units, maybe that, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Susan said that wasn't.
One unit.
No, Susan came back and said it was not an option to have the flex space go just to the veterans.
Okay, well, I have to state that this is frustrating that that piece of information was not shared until right now. Putting that aside, I think and for more newsflash, what about the 1 unit?
Marzi, do you want to speak to that?
To eliminating the 1 unit,
Yeah.
is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
The same thing in terms of the developer stated that the cost of losing the unit would be close to $2 million, and they were not, that was something that's not gonna make the project viable.
Close to $1 million.
Okay. $1 million or $2 million?
I can double check, but it was definitely in the millions in terms of
1 unit.
1 unit, yes.
Okay.
That's a joke. Sorry.
So do we have any more discussion on David's motion?
I just got to say it out loud. I'm really concerned about the approach. Let me pause for a second. I know that B'nai B'rith has processed several different options. And yet, as we heard here tonight, it's bewildering to me that we are this far along in this project and that a developer has not engaged directly with the neighbors and the vets to do the design. And I just know, I've consulted with other people who do low-income housing development. This answer is just not believable. I feel like it feels as though they have a point of view, which, hey, they're the developer, they can have that. But it does not feel like this is a logical engagement on being creative and finding a solution. They're supposed to be building veterans housing, and it feels as though they're coming up with ways to kind of push a certain solution. We sat there on the phone with one of the members of B'nai B'rith who started to give us an estimate which was orders of magnitude less than that. If you take the post, and the option is they originally proposed it, 1,500 square feet, and what it cost us in order to pull that out, it was $900,000. So if you're going to take another 500 square feet,
300 grand.
it's 300 grand. Maybe there's something else funky, but how do you get to $2 million?
So,
I mean,
David,
it's
I just, if I can clarify, I'm sorry, so I was incorrect in terms of the number of units, I'm sorry, because what I had from, we received communication from B'nai B'rith that if we were to reduce the unit count to 30 units, then that would leave, I'm sorry, so not 40, 30 units, then the gap would be $2.1 million.
Yeah, okay, that's totally different scenario, Marcy, that's the, okay.
So I think what was discussed in our call, Doug, was that the build-out would be what you and David just discussed, the $300,000 additional dollars for us to fund
Right.
in order to build out the additional space.
Yes.
The loss of the unit would be a loss of some tax credits that they would not be able to
Correct.
have. So there would be an additional cost.
Correct.
I don't know what that
Right.
dollar amount ever came back at. I don't know if it did ever come back, because Susan then reached out and said, what is the point of going down that option if we could go down this other option where either, and this is my interpretation, I didn't speak to Susan, but I think the conclusion is, what I just came to the conclusion of is, there's really two options. Why are we trying to make this middle option happen if it doesn't satisfy the developer or the neighbors or the veterans? The two options are the veterans stay exactly as they are, and you build the same building you were going to build if the veterans post was inside, 4 stories with mechanical on top, or you take it down, you move them, and you build, like, we don't have to go through all these iterations. We don't have to have them spend money when they're not contractually obligated to do so. We don't have to have them speak to neighbors and veterans and anybody, because it's our job to make that decision of what we're doing with that piece of land, not theirs. And then we come to that conclusion and we set them on their way. That is why they said, when we last had this conversation, we asked to maybe have this idea of optionality in the contract, where we said, hey, we have these 2 ideas floating around. Can we make this sort of kick the can? And they said, it doesn't do us, the developer, any service to do that. It really doesn't do you guys any service to do that either. You're just delaying the decision. And they were not interested in an LDA that contained that. So regardless of how you feel about that middle option, I just, for the sake of moving this conversation along to make a decision, I feel like that middle option is moot anyways. The cons outweigh the cons list for option A. The pros are not enough to usurp the option A of the veterans stay or the veterans go. So to me, it just makes more sense, instead of trying to make it work in all of its nuance, that it just comes off, because in the end, the result is that we are left with a scenario which has more cons than pros of the first available scenario, which still is the veterans' quote first choice anyways.
Yeah. Well, not to belabor, I understand the logic of what you're saying, but I would say by that same logic then, you know, from my accounting, the option of moving the vets permanently to Reach Arts has even more cons. And so then you're really down to one option. But, you know, that's, you know, obviously there's value judgments in this, but, you know, the list of cons for moving them permanently, beyond the fact that they're just opposed to it, is we've got a real potential issue, you know, kind of filed issue with town meeting, got an issue with the RFP. People are already stirring about a legal response to that. We don't know actually how much it's going to cost us to do the repairs at Reach Arts. We know the parking is at best a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle. And what about the zoning? How do we?
Marzie, can you do you have any information on the zoning?
So earlier today, I had reached out to Max. As you know, Max Casper is the building commissioner as a zoning enforcement officer, and he said that there could be a viable option, a path in order to meet the zoning requirements.
So I also spoke with Angela Ippolito to question zoning, and Angela Ippolito from the planning board said that there is no issues with zoning. And that is not, that I'm giving you a quote, there is no issues with zoning in that area.
Is this her jurisdiction, and how can she say that with the zoning? It's not zoned.
She's on the planning board, so I've asked the planning board. You can ask Marzie. I'm not,
But are those the two relevant parties? I mean, it's not zoned for that right now, so we're gonna put a liquor license in something that's residential.
There is language.
That building already uses liquor licenses.
yes,
has in the
there
past.
are liquor licenses issued to that building.
There have, and you know,
Constantly.
that people haven't been bothered by it. But
As part of the liquor license,
doesn't mean it's
building commissioner and other people support, right? And they come forward and they say, we've checked all the boxes. So
yeah, that might, yes, this board does control a liquor license, but doesn't control zoning.
I mean, I'm looking at our zoning bylaws, institutional uses in A2 and A4, club, lodge, fraternal organization, profit or not-for-profit. A2, no. A4, no. Not even with a special permit.
So what, we'd have to go back to town meeting and get the zoning changed for, and then you're in spot zoning, or are you gonna zone the whole thing for, you know, like for?
Again, it could potentially be a non-conforming use. There's a pre-existing use, as you recall, that used to be an American Legion Hall. Then, you know, that was the former use. Earlier today, I think that Max provided an email to David to your response. And I can read to you in terms of what Max's responses was. He just stated that would need details to eventually, on the eventual use to make the final determination. But in my opinion, there are some potential paths.
Hold on a second. Angela, can you comment on this?
Diana, have it.
Zoning board? Zoning board?
Angela, you can unmute yourself. Angela, you can unmute yourself. You're through there.
All right, I mean, as we're waiting for.
Okay, I think I finally did it. Can you hear me now?
yes.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's not zone B2. Okay, 89 Borough Street is a planned development district. It is neither A2 or A4. I'm very familiar with the zoning. I did the research on this project, the zoning on it with our consultants. In a planned development district, it is not an overlay. It's a complete zone in and of itself. The recommendation was for residential use up to 3 units by right. However, that was not the exclusive use, and it could also be used for any purpose that the town deemed was in the best interest of its use. And under that understanding, it was an American Legion, obviously years and years ago. That's not just the precedent here that matters, but that's the way the law is written. There is no zoning relief you can get on this particular project. The only approvals it needs is an administrative site plan. And if you wanted to change the zoning, you'd have to go to town meeting and change it like we did at Atlantic Crossing. Atlantic Crossing, where the temple used to be, was also a planned development district. And when the developer came in and wanted to do a subdivision, we had to go back to the meeting and change the zoning. So I'm really certain about zoning is there. And I hope that's helpful.
Angela, can you point us to where it is in the existing zoning? Because I see 4.5.2.0 permitted
Yeah, just go to page 50 and yeah. Are you looking at the planned development district?
I'm
It's on
looking.
page 50.
Okay, it's on page 50. I can.
And if you have 67, under the purposes, David, you have 4.5.1.0. You can see under the purposes, it talks about promote the efficient use of the land in the districts, provide the opportunity to redevelop the land in the district to the benefit the town and the public, including facilitating as appropriate the removal and significant rehabilitation of building and others.
So I'm sure that's passed.
4.5.0. Yep.
So I guess while David's looking that up, I'll just finish my little piece to say that I know there's a real kind of tension or balance, I imagine for all of us, and to kind of take the lead of what the vets want for this vets project, and have it be kind of the most economical for the town, which would allow us, if we so chose to go down that path, to make some really significant investments in that neighborhood, not just on that property, but by saving basically $1.5 million by not moving, we have resources to address these other issues that the neighbors have brought up in terms of, if it means police or rodent control or lighting or sidewalks or, traffic or landscaping between this development, or kind of there's a significant pool of funds there to really make that neighborhood feel like a neighborhood, not just this spot, but the whole area. That feels as though it's not completely kind of choosing one group or the other, but it is finding a balance. And really the primary thing is this height, and it's no way to kind of create more sunlight for that hour that's going to be impacted by that extra floor. But hopefully by using these funds and being in cooperation, there would be a way in which we could make this a smoother, you'd be less construction because you wouldn't be tearing down the post. There are kind of ways in which this could get balanced out. And I just feel like for people who literally have, like, literally gone to war, that, you know, taxpayers and people that own homes here are important too. But at that final analysis, like, can we just find a way to stick with the post there and build the housing right next to it and build a great community, and really engage with people about what they need with the funding that we would save? I think that's my ask.
Can I just ask a couple clarifying things, because I admire the ask that we are being very careful with our words and truthful in the words that we use. So I just want to clarify that the conversations we have had thus far with the vets have been related to the post, and that the veterans project that we are hoping to build with Benet as a partner would be a veterans project which would include the vets of the post would obviously be more than okay to participate. But the pool of veterans, there's over 400 veterans in Swampscott, and it would be a senior veterans preference, Swampscott preference. So then the pool would be even greater than that. And nobody's taken a poll of 400 veterans. We have spoken to and this is not to downplay what you and David have done, you've spoken diligently to a group of folks who will absolutely be affected, but are not the only veterans who can or might be affected by adding to 42 units of housing.
Right, but
So
in every
I just-
scenario, you're gonna get 42 units of housing. That's no difference, right? I mean, all the greater good of the 400 veterans here, all these options are gonna serve that group equally.
Well, I think there are options that, if you take option 2 off the table, that include the post. But I'm just saying, like, we're not, like, when I say I spoke to the neighbors, I didn't knock on every door and speak to every neighbor in the area of Pine Street, but I spoke to neighbors, right? And when you say you spoke to vets, you didn't speak to every vet.
No.
So I just want to be clear, because I don't then want to say what I want to say and then have it come back that I am making broad strokes or being dramatic or saying things more greatly than what is actually done, because I'm taking you at your word. You spoke to the post ad nauseum for a long period of time, multiple times, but we had one meeting with the community, which included the post, which included neighbors. One meeting.
Exactly.
So when you say things like, well, there's maybe things we could do to mitigate the traffic and the this and the that, like, we don't have a plan to mitigate any of that. We've not had any conversation publicly other than that one time. And there are no promises being made to the neighbors. There's just all of these wants and wishes for the vets that we would like to uphold, or you and David would like to uphold and are bringing forward to us.
Well, and I'm also bringing forward hearing the neighbors. And in option 1, you now have a pool of funds that you don't have with option, quote, 3, or the...
Right, but I think a lot of the things that the neighbors are saying, you can't fix with money.
Not everything, but
Right.
a lot of things
Right.
you can. Clearly, you can't solve the one floor. That you can't solve. Yep. Yes.
Can't
Without a
solve the
doubt.
parking, you can't
But there's
solve,
no parking. That's not an issue. In option 1, there's no parking different than there is in option 3. There's parking off-street. So that's another virtue of option 1, is that all the parking for the housing and for the vets is off-street. Whereas in option 3, moving into Reach Arts, all the stuff for the post is going to clearly be on, the vast majority of it is going to be on the street.
Parking's an issue in I think we agreed 2 meetings ago, parking is a serious issue.
No matter
Is an
which
issue, no matter
option.
which option, like parking
Right.
really is a moot point.
But not now. That's, what we got back from Benet about what's viable and what's not viable. There was nothing in this option of building all on one site that I identified that there was any parking issue. One of the other options, they said there were parking issues, but in this one, there was no commentary about a parking issue. So I'm just kind of.
That's not what I remember. I remember
We have the
a
document.
parking issue.
Yeah. There was a
In,
parking issue when you tried to build it all on 3 floors and have a post there and everything. That pushed a bunch
There's-
of parking spots out in the street.
in our conversations, though, there's a parking issue with the one building on the one site, and then having the VFW there, there was still a parking issue.
Not according to what they wrote to us.
According to our meeting that we sat in, there was a parking issue.
They clearly stated what's viable, what wasn't viable, and in certain situations, they pointed out parking issues, and this one, they did not point out a parking issue, so.
Okay, I'm only gonna recall the meeting that we sat in amongst ourselves. So, do we have any more discussion on this motion? David's motion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the zoning, it just, to me, appears that it's it's a variety of housing types, and again, I don't think, per my read of this, I don't see that there's allowable zoning right now. There may be a path forward, but I think that involves changing zoning, not using the existing zoning that is in the zoning bylaws as per my read.
So there's no sentence that says, or any use or right under the, what, as Ms. Ceppolito stated?
Purposes of this section are to provide opportunities for a variety of housing types at certain locations of the town at greater densities and with reduced dimensional requirements than would otherwise be allowed, expand possible uses on the land in the districts, promote the efficient use of land in the districts, provide the opportunity to redevelop the land in the districts to benefit the town and public, including facilitating, as appropriate, the removal or significant rehabilitation of abandoned and dilapidated buildings, pose a hazard to public safety and welfare, provide diversity and variety in housing types, promote design and land planning to achieve aesthetic qualities of the town, and encourage development of new housing that is affordable to low and moderate income households. And then it goes on to describe permitted principal and accessory uses permitted in the planned development districts, 4.5.2.2, in the Borough Senior Center PDD, a single, 2-family, or 3-family dwelling is allowed as of right.
Do we have any more questions or comments? So can we have a vote on David's motion? Danielle?
No.
Doug?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
Mary Ellen? No. Katie?
No.
Okay. So that motion has failed. Now I'd like to see if we can have a motion for the option and disposition and the ground lease that's presented, that you all have copies of right here.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a discussion?
Discussion?
From the start of this project and in response to allegations of a lack of transparency, this board has committed to realign our approach to meet community expectations. Whether or not these claims are justified, we have made every effort to bring these discussions into public session as demanded. We listened, we course corrected, we held open meetings where facts and open issues were discussed transparently. We've had conversations with veterans representatives, but to respect the law, no promises were made because discussions of 2 or more members of the select board would violate open meeting law. Despite claims that board members have disclosed private information, the majority of the board has adhered strictly to ethical and legal obligations. We've worked diligently to strike a balance between supporting the veterans, preserving the post, listening to neighbors' concerns, and ensuring that ARPA funds approved by town meeting are preserved and utilized effectively for this project. Yet with every step forward, we face continued pushback. First, allegations on a lack of transparency, which we work to address. Then concerns of insufficient information, which we sought to alleviate by bringing in our town council, our special town council, town staff, and experts from the affordable housing field. Folks were very concerned that the project would not be for veterans. We made this very clear repeatedly, that this is affordable housing designed for citizens with a veteran's preference and a Swampscott preference. I remain committed to collaborating with veterans organizations to ensure that Swampscott veterans, from the estimated 400 plus in town, have access to this housing once completed. Educating veterans about the process and conditions to enter this housing will be critical. At our most recent meeting, veterans expressed concerns about the inconvenience of moving. We tried to reassure them that the town could work to cover costs of moving. There were also discussions about cash flow issues tied to parking revenue from a nearby cannabis shop. We tried to address the cash flow issue by explaining the parking income will be lost regardless of whether the VFW moves or not. We are working to mitigate parking issues in the surrounding areas. Additionally, the town has proposed assuming ownership in all of the capital costs at the Reach Arts Building, allowing the VFW Post to redirect its resources to its core mission of providing veteran services. The town suggested covering 1 year worth of 1 year's worth of utility bills for the VFW Post if moved to Reach Arts to help stabilize its finances and enable them to focus on outreach and long-term sustainability in our community. The town proposed leasing the entire Reach Arts building with an option for subleasing so that the VFW Post could offset its costs by renting space to either veterans or community programs or any other program, thereby closing potential financial gaps. While some have said that the Reach Arts building is not ADA compliant, we've had town staff clarify, I believe the square footage of accessible space at Reach is approximately equal to what is available at the current VW Post for ADA accessible space. The board has listened, adapted, and pivoted in response to concerns. Some feel it's too little too late, but I urge you not to let personal feelings about individual board members cloud your judgment about what will ultimately support our veterans and the Post for years to come. I understand your frustration, I share it. I would have changed many aspects of how this project had been communicated, particularly surrounding the lack of communication to the neighbors and the communications with the veterans. But it seems like every time we resolve one issue, another arises, and the goalpost continues to shift. While I firmly believe that our veterans are vital to our community, they are part of a larger fabric that includes all residents of Swampscott and surrounding neighbors. We must consider multiple stakeholders, some with competing interests. The most significant challenge is the use of the $1.8 million in ARPA funds, which must be allocated to affordable housing by December 31st. If this deadline isn't met, it is my understanding, directed by town staff, that we would have no choice but to find alternative funding sources, either through revenue increase, borrowing, or tax increases. This would go against what town meeting originally approved. Additionally, the concerns of the neighbors around the VFW Post regarding the light blockage, parking, congestion are valid. While we can't solve every problem, we can ensure that the design of the veterans' housing aligns with the size and characteristic of the neighborhood. Listen, no solution is perfect. I've said that in these meetings before, but we've tried to consider every possibility. During our last meeting, we explored 6 different configurations for the project. Benet, our developers, have been extremely patient and responsive to each suggestion, but ultimately the decision rests with us, not them. After much discussion, having weighed the balance of the various issues, I do support a motion to approve the LDA and proceed with issuing an RFP for leasing the Reach Arts building immediately and continue to work with the VFW Post and neighbors to ensure that we accomplish something truly meaningful for our veterans and our town. I also want to reiterate that the timely allocation of ARPA funds is crucial for the project, and if we don't move forward with a plan, we risk losing those funds and undermining the goals we've set to support both affordable housing and our veterans.
David?
I just think it's incredibly disingenuous. We don't have the zoning. We're going to bank on town meeting screwing over the veterans and the VFW by by changing the zoning, this situation can be completely avoided tonight by the select board. But, you know, go ahead and do what you will. The town has a 30-year history of taking and taking and taking from the veterans and not giving, and not meeting them even halfway. So you got your votes, make your motion, and let's get on with our meeting.
Doug?
Well, I think, kind of to David's point, we have an LDA in front of us. Where's the promised document of everything you're going to do for the vets?
Yep.
Want us to write a document right now?
No, I'm saying that's evidence of the fact that it's easy to talk. It's easy to say, this is what we're going to do.
You can write a document right now.
But that's just the point, Mary Ellen. Why isn't it here now? If you're so committed to
Because
this,
it needs to be a proposal. Maybe you want to add something to it, take it away. Is
Then
there
we
any
could have had that
reason?
discussion.
Is there any reason that you would think that we would not issue the longest possible lease available? Is there any reason you think that we would not do 12 months of utilities? Is there?
I have no idea, because maybe now you're going to go and like find out that if you can even do this in this zone, that it's going to cost you a lot more money than you thought.
Yep.
And so then you're going to be back here saying, well, maybe we can't do that, or, oh, it's going to cost us too much. And so you've got a half-baked proposal here that, you're talking, Katie, about talking to the neighbors. How many neighbors have you talked to in the Borough Street neighborhood?
Probably 5.
Yeah, they loving this?
Yeah, I mean, I've had both support and opposition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many have you spoke to? Do you want to compare notes?
No, I'm just saying that you're the one that's saying that it's such a big deal to like having it go and talk to the neighbors. And as if that's like kind of the end of the story, that clearly, every single email we've gotten no one in that neighborhood has been saying rah, rah, rah. So I don't know where you found people that were rah, rah, rah in that neighborhood.
But what about the Pine Street neighborhood? Because I talked to
Absolutely.
three people today,
Yeah.
who have problems with a 4-story building.
I'm sure they do.
And they have problems with the development in general. So if there's anything we can do to mitigate the concerns of the people that already live there, why wouldn't we do that? If we could put a building that's slightly smaller to actually help our residents who stood here tonight, Mrs. Dalton, I think, told us, why wouldn't we do that?
Because the project's for the vets.
But the project,
And
but
the
wait a minute,
impact on neighbors. I know,
So
no, you
have you
asked me a
talked,
question.
no, I haven't,
Hold on a
Doug.
second.
I
We have to
gave you your
stop.
time. You had a lot of
No, you
time.
asked me a question.
You had a lot of time, Doug. You had a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
did.
time.
Doug, let her speak, please.
The vets, I don't think my mic's working, too. The vets, have you talked to all 450 that live in Swampscott? But it is relevant, because you just said it's for
Wait,
the
Danielle,
vets.
use Doug's
The vets.
Use Doug's microphone.
Oh, sorry, I don't know.
No, I think it's working.
Okay.
So what are we talking about? We're talking about the vets of post 1240. We're talking about a very small subsection of vets that you and David are focused on. We're not talking about every vet that lives in Swampscott, right?
But all the other stuff is equal. We're building 42 units of affordable housing no matter what. And the town, the article, the RFP, and everything were about not just the housing, it was also the post. And so you have to talk about both.
Right. You certainly do, Doug, but we're not taking anything from the vets.
That's not their opinion.
But that's their opinion. That's not my opinion. We're not saying you get nothing, you're done. We're relocating them, right? And we're trying to better that situation, right? We're trying to make it as comfortable for them there as possible so that we can also alleviate the issues of the residents of Pine Street, because they count too. They do matter.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you guys aren't addressing that at all.
I
You're,
totally
you're
address
focused
that.
on the veterans
Pool of
of
money, a
post
big pool of
1240.
money to make
To do
improvement.
what? Can you make a Jetson card that will alleviate traffic? Because that's
There's
one of their
as much
concerns.
traffic in
Exactly, so
almost
what is your money gonna do? What are you gonna do with your money?
The rodent control.
The rodent
traffic
control, we've been talking
calming.
about rodents in
You're
this
not
whole
gonna have any
town.
money left to do
We've
all
been
that stuff.
talking about rodents for the whole year in this whole
Now we have a
town.
pool of $1.5 million.
And we're gonna-
You're not
okay.
have.
But just to be clear, if we're going to use logic and truth in this conversation, what you just called our half-baked plan to support the veterans is the same argument that I can say you have a half-baked plan to support the neighbors.
No, it's not the same, Katie, because I have a pool of money to actually do it.
So there is a pool of money to support the veterans. There's $750,000 in the budget we saw.
Yeah.
That's being used up now.
How do you know?
By this
You just said $500,000.
I'm saying it's at least $500,000 just to cover the elevator, the sprinkler system, and to bring the electrical up to code. That doesn't count, and that's a minimum. That's a minimum number. I mean, we walked the building with Doug on Saturday. I did.
So
I
that's
did
Doug's quote?
No. He's just saying, he's just
I'd
giving
have
me-
to go through an RFP process. It would have to go through an RFP process in order to be
Right, so we
viable.
got, none of these numbers are actual. All of this is philosophical.
They're gonna be hi-
You're going to make philosophical arguments on your side. The other side is going to make philosophical arguments. All of this stuff is pie-in-the-sky ideas. None of it is concrete in front of us with guaranteed quotes. Doug Dubin, do you have a guaranteed quote?
No.
No.
Thank you. So your 500,000 estimate, David, no offense, you're not a builder, you're not a developer. I don't know that I can, please. Okay. Right, please.
But what is a fact is that if you built the housing on the one site and left the post there, that we would get a $1.5 million rent payment, and you'd need to spend no other money for the post, and you would have that money to deploy in other ways. Do I have, literally, this is $50,000 for this tree? No. But the fact is, you have that pool of money. Whereas with what you all
Yes,
are
you do.
proposing,
You do.
you do not have a quote, you do not have a guarantee of how much it's gonna cost, and you're not gonna be able to do anything else for the neighborhood, the Pine Street neighborhood, and you're gonna have an unknown amount of money you're gonna have to put into Reach Arts. Okay, so I think it's just easy to sit here and say, oh, hey, we just put the post over there, we'll move them, even though they don't wanna move, and we're gonna figure it out, and the zoning will be fine, and we have plenty of money, and we don't have a plan.
So Doug, we keep saying the same things over and over and over.
We do have the commander who has his hand raised. Maybe we could recognize him.
I think the commander could have been here earlier, but
And you're about to
let's
vote to take away his
let's
post.
have
so I think we
let's
should hear
have
from
the
him.
let's have the commander. If you could unmute the commander, and then Danielle, you will finish, and then we can move on.
Nelson Leon can.
He's on the thing here.
Thanks, Joe.
I already allowed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, so.
You can speak.
Nelson?
He's still showing
Okay.
he's muted on this side. Does that mean it's
That's
us?
his own.
That's 'cause
That's him?
We've already allowed the mic share.
Maybe we
Okay,
could
we're
go
going
back.
to move on. Danielle?
So there are a couple of things that I know. I know that we need this affordable housing. We need housing for our seniors with veterans' preference is a fabulous, fabulous idea, and it is something we are trying to do, right? Those are the things I do know. I do know that people have reached out to me from the Pine Street neighborhood with their concerns, and they do not fall on deaf ears for me. So when I talk to people and they have concerns about the height of this building, those are real concerns to me. I have done a lot of outreach on my own. I've spoken to 2 members of the planning board. I've spoken to members of the Affordable Housing Trust. I've done as much due diligence as I can. And that is why I feel confident in the decision tonight. Yes, it is not a perfect scenario. No, it is not going to check all the boxes. Primarily, the Pine Street neighborhood doesn't want any development, right? They are not comfortable with anything going up there. And I respect that and I understand it. I get the traffic concerns, I get the sewerage backup concerns, like I spoke to a woman today about it. I understand that. So if I can do anything to make life more livable and comfortable for the residents of that neighborhood, that's what I'm gonna do. I feel like we're put here to advocate for residents of Swampscott, right? So we're trying to do that by making affordable housing for our seniors, for our veterans, and we have to focus on the people that live here. That's what it comes down to for me. And that's not to say that the people that are members of Post 1240 are not valid humans and that they don't deserve a comfortable place to be. I completely agree with that. And I think it's incumbent upon this board to make Borough Street as comfortable as it can possibly be, no matter what it costs us. Because that is what the right thing to do is. That we definitely do owe them something. I agree with that. But I think that they're not the only stakeholder here. There's a lot of stakeholders, and we're trying to make a lot of people happy. And it's not for bad intent. There's no, nefarious intent here at all. And I think that the infighting that's going on within our board is totally counterproductive, right? We're all trying to do similar things. We're trying to do the best we can, right? So that's how I feel. That's my opinion.
So for me, as I close, as far as making sure that there is a long-term lease prepared, actually KP Law is working on a lease right now. As far as paying the capital expenses that would be in the lease can go out, an RFP can go out immediately. We do not have to wait on a delay. As far as writing up and making sure that we can absorb the utilities bills, we can take care of that as well. That can all be taken care of. For me, when I sit down and I look at this, I've said it before, that this has not been a pleasant experience whatsoever. However, when I think about what is a post a building, or is it the post the organization? For me, the post is a building, and we can relocate the building, and we can give more support to the people that are involved in this post. So that's what really makes my decision here. The neighborhood is very important to me, and the ramifications of the extra height and the congestion down there really has played a role. So veterans housing is a necessity. It's a home in Swampscott. It's security, it's stability. I don't want to take any chances on losing any of this. I don't want to delay it. And for that reason, I want to call a vote on these options in front of us.
We attempt Nelson to speak one more time.
Yeah, we could try that again.
He's able, that way.
Is he able now?
Nelson, can you unmute yourself?
There's no way for us to unmute him, is there?
We already did.
No, I just-
All right, so with that, I would like to call a vote. Katie?
Yes.
David?
No.
Doug?
Heck no.
Danielle?
Yes.
Mary Ellen, yes. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is Town Administrator's Report.
Okay, try to keep this as brief as possible. Finance Department, and thank you to Amy and Patrick for working with me. Amy, the department heads are working with the finance team and are busy working on the FY26 budget. Amy will start meeting with the department heads in the week of January 6th. Thank you. Patrick is generating real estate tax bills, which will be sent out on January 2nd. He's also preparing the W-2s for town employees. Thank you, Patrick. Facilities, Max, thanks for showing up tonight. Appreciate your support as always. RFPs are being issued for the library entrance redesign. the senior center HVAC, and for the new high school lighting. Both of those capital articles were approved at the special town meeting. The library redesign is a capital improvement project, as I just said. And also, thank you to Max. He's been filling in as the building commissioner, and to Roger Enos, who has been doing inspections until such time that we can find a full-time building inspector. Police department, we seem to have resolved the issue up around Reddington Street. There was some issues with 2 travel lanes heading southbound on Reddington Street. We put the message board up by King Street. That seems to alleviate the problem. Met with Max today. May still be an issue with the center line up there. We're gonna have to shift the center line on the top of the street. May be a problem. We have to wait for the weather to cooperate. Can't paint the lines unless it's at least 45, 50 degrees. Officer Cassidy, John Cassidy, is being deployed to Japan for 4 months, beginning in January, and I'd like to thank John for his continued service to our country. The holiday parade was held this past Saturday and was a huge success. A special thanks to the off-duty police officers who donate their time to assist with this event, which I think is very admirable. Public Works, we talked about Mark Noonan. Thank you, Mark. And then finally, the annual Care Dimensions tree lighting. Katie, thank you for showing up.
You're very welcome.
Personally, that was my 22nd annual tree lighting that I've attended. And I always get choked up as part of the ceremony, but I'd like to acknowledge Nick Conti, Justin Mitchell, and Derek Pittman for their work in decorating the spruce tree this year. We changed up the design a little bit, put some more lights on it, and I think the residents were happy to see that. We also changed up the lighting on the street lights, as opposed to doing the trees, which is a little awkward going down Monument Ave because none of the trees are the same size. We put the holiday lights on the street lights. Looks good for a change. Thank you.
Okay, so, yes, anybody have any questions?
Gino, could you remind us who worked on all of the decorations around the municipal buildings? John McLaughlin and folks on your team?
Yep, John.
So I want to acknowledge them too.
Yep, and John sent a nice thank you to 2 newest employees.
Yep.
Joe Ragusa and Cabot Dow, and Justin Mitchell and Derek also participated.
So thank you, DPW workers and John.
Especially to John.
Yeah, especially John.
You know, I just have a quick question on the police. So it's my understanding, I just learned this, is that the only police officers that are working are the ones on the detail, and all those other police officers you see are all just volunteering their time?
They do, yep. I just found that out as well.
I think that's
So I'd like to commend them.
best kept secret.
Yeah.
I think that's the greatest parade. All right. Okay, any other questions? All right, moving to the consent agenda. Did we need to have somebody here from National Grid, or the petition
No.
is just enough? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Wait, for the minutes?
Yeah, they're at the very back.
They're in the back.
Okay, so that's November 20th. So these don't include?
11/6?
Okay. No, I just
You just
had
have
a-
11/6 and
I- I had a-
11/20?
I just had an addition to to my select board time from 11:20. I just had requested a meeting, and so it says, notice we had an all-female patrol staff, which shows how far we've come since we've been civil service, and I just requested a meeting update from the chiefs regarding hiring practices, because I think we had our last update in June. And I just wanted to add that. So with that friendly amendment, I'm happy to approve.
Okay, Diane, you have that? Okay.
I'll add that, David.
Thank you.
So can I have a motion
So
to,
approve the consent
second?
agenda.
Katie, second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And with that, we have select board time. Danielle?
I'm good.
Doug?
Nothing.
David?
Yeah, I just want to wish everybody who celebrates a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. And just last thing is assessors. So as we get into budget season, we talked about this, You know, I've certainly talked to members of the Board of Assessors. I've talked to the current assessor, former assessors. I really think, as we're putting our budget together, that we need a full-time assessor. So I am going to beat that drum. You know, hopefully as we're putting that together, we're adding that we're making that part-time FTE a full-time FTE. That's my Christmas wish.
Or at least getting additional labor in there.
Correct,
Yes.
yeah. Yep.
And that comes actually from the DOR, the
Yeah, Department of Revenue.
Department of Revenue actually has made that recommendation.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
You work on that?
Katie?
Yeah,
Fully noted.
so, I would like to use my select board time. I thought we were going to have a break from, select board meetings, but it sounds like we might have one more for this year. But I would like to say this, and I was going to say this regardless of how the votes stand. It has been difficult to navigate some of the tensions on the board that we've been discussing through the meeting. I try and continue to try to be respectful in my dissension, and I try and will continue to try to encourage a sense that sort of to reiterate what Danielle was saying, I don't feel that there was what David and Doug pursued had any wrong malice or wrongdoing to the neighbors. I don't think that what we were doing by pursuing neighbor priorities had any malice intent to the veterans. I understand the neighbors might feel otherwise, and I understand the post might feel otherwise, but I do want to say that it was not an easy decision. It was not made flippantly, and there was a lot of work put in this, and will continue to be a lot of work to be done on this project by all of us. So I just want to say that.
So as far as my select board time, I think people really don't understand or get the full picture of how much work this board has had to put in over the last 6 months. We've had multiple items on our agendas. With that said, we all signed up for it, and I hope the new year brings us a little bit of peace, and like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, happy whatever you might celebrate, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
By the way,
Oh, you're